It's my nature. The only thing missing right now from this being absolute perfection. If you've been to the Louvre in Paris and you go to see the Mona Lisa, you wait in line, they've got the serpent line goes all the way through, and you're like, I'm about to see the Mona Lisa, the most famous work of art in the history of the world, arguably. The Mona Lisa. And then you go and you finally get there and you walk and it's behind all kinds of rope and you look at it and you're like, that looks like it's the size of a postage stamp. And the only thing that you nitpick about it is this is supposed to be art perfection, but you're like, it'd be kind of cooler if it was a little bit bigger. There's an imperfection you can find in it. Michelangelo's David, which is that is actually, in terms of sculpture, it is the definition of perfection. Michelangelo's David is perfection essentially because when it was constructed, if you will, by Michelangelo, they had a huge block of marble that they wanted to do a statue that would stand atop the dome of Florence, Italy, atop the cathedral. And they had the perfect marble in terms of the purity of marble, but the purity of the marble was such that the porous nature of it made it almost impossible to sculpt because every sculptor that they attempted to hire said, if I chisel on that, it's going to immediately crumble because the radiance of the marble is from the porous nature of it. And the one sculptor, who I believe was 27 at the time, I could be wrong in that, was Michelangelo, that said, I can do it. He was basically Jeff Spicoli. He said, my old man's a TV repairman. He's got the ultimate set of tools. I can do it. And so he went behind a curtain for basically 4 years. And then on the day that they unveiled Michelangelo's David to go atop the dome of the cathedral, the Duomo, as they call it, they said, that is so perfect that we're just going to leave it here on the ground level because everyone needs to admire it. It is perfection. The Final Four in Indianapolis is Michelangelo's David or the Mona Lisa. It is perfection with the exception of one thing. In the case of the Mona Lisa, it's that it's a little too small. And in the case of Michelangelo's David, it's the fact that it couldn't be placed on top of the dome because it was so perfect. But there was a slight imperfection that could be found by somebody if they were to critique. The only thing right now from stopping this being the absolute beauty of art for the Final Four and the sports world to recognize there's nowhere better than Indianapolis to do it is the fact that I kind of wish it was a little more sunny. Outside of that, I welcome you today, especially if you're from out of town and you stumbled upon this radio show, to this, the best city that there is to put on these events. And the Final Four is here. The University of Connecticut Huskies, the team that has been as dominant as anybody in the last handful of years in college basketball. And yes, a relative Johnny-come-lately in the grand scheme of things that has become a Tier 1 program, led by an incredible shot by the reigning Indiana Mr. Basketball, who hails from Greenfield, Indiana, just some 20 miles directly east of Indianapolis, taking on the Illinois Fighting Illini, the neighboring state immediately to the west. The Illini, who have 2 Indiana players on their roster and a coach that is a defensive-minded, tough-natured coach, but at the same time very likable, that went out and found players from all areas of the globe that can shoot the basketball, including the son of a former Pacer, Peja Stojakovic. The University of Illinois, who's been as consistently strong as any of probably 10 different programs this year in college basketball. The University of Michigan, led by Dusty May, grew up in Greene County, knew JMV from the time that they were young, manager at Indiana. Circuitous route to land in Ann Arbor with constant whispers as to whether or not he would return back to Bloomington, but everything he needs is right there with the Maize and Blue, and may have the best team in college basketball. And they've roared their way into the Final Four by resoundingly getting past Tennessee. And they take on, of course, in all of that, the Arizona Wildcats, a team that probably has been as a program as successful as anybody in college basketball over the last quarter century, to not make a Final Four. People would be stunned when you hear, because you just assume that it feels like they're in the Final Four every 5 years. No, they're like a 1 seed, or they are 28-4 every year, and then they always make a deep run, but they don't get necessarily to this point. And here they have on their staff a former Indiana Mr. Basketball who himself took Arizona to the Final Four in Jason Gardner, and they got here by way of knocking out one of the favorite teams of the area in Purdue. It's a fabulous Final Four. It's exciting matchups. It's unpredictable as to who might win it, but more so it is special because it's yet another installment of Indianapolis putting on this event. As I'm speaking right now, Illinois is practicing at Lucas Oil Stadium, and that place looks like the Denver Broncos are here. I haven't seen that much orange since Peyton Manning came back with the Broncos. I saw a lot of orange in the Hoosier Dome when Illinois came through in '89 as the number 1 seed. Many people thought it should have been Indiana that year because they won the Big Ten, but Illinois swept Indiana. They got the number 1 seed. They were at the Hoosier Dome along with Ball State. And that in the first rounds that took place in '89. But now Illinois is back. And they're practicing right now, and that's one of the great traditions of the Final Four. The practice where the fans get to go down and watch it and see it, and it is so special. It is so special as a fan of your program to watch the public practice and know the stage they're on and soak it all in and feel that energy in the building. And it's special as a native of whatever city you're in to know that the sports world, all eyes are on it. And that people in Seattle, Washington, and people in El Paso, Texas, and people in Gainesville, Florida, and people in Fredericksburg, Maryland, and people in Loudon, New Hampshire will watch this weekend and wish they were in Indianapolis, and it's pretty cool. Now, that is not to say that if you come down to enjoy all of these the festivities and the environment, that you're not going to have some obstruction getting down here. Because and you can see it, and you can feel it. Eddie Garrison this morning called me to say, when are you leaving to come into work? And I said, probably in like 5 minutes. And he said, well, let me tell you, what way do you come? Well, I come from the north down Pennsylvania. If you're coming down Pennsylvania from the north to go to downtown Indianapolis, you get about as far as 11th Street. Actually, more like 9th. And just before. What's that again, Eddie?
Then you got to.
See, you like that, don't you?
I've never said I didn't like that one.
They do have it blocked off, and that's because of concerts taking place tonight. Now, tonight, here are the concerts. I'm hoping I get these right. I know 21 Pilots, right?
That's the headliner.
They're stressed out, right? Aren't they the stressed out folk?
Yes, they are.
Keshi is right before them. And who's the opener?
I don't know. I got to
Is it Joseph Valance? Did I say that right?
Sure.
But 21 Pilots tonight. Everything getting underway at 4:30. This is at the American Legion Mall, which is where we are located, by the way. Our new location is just to the north of the downtown library. Just to the south of the library, of course, is the American Legion Mall that goes down to the Indiana War Memorial, which is one of the most fabulous buildings anywhere in this country. And if you've never gone into the shrine room inside the War Memorial, plan on doing it sooner rather than later. But you're not going to be able to do so this weekend because it's going to be surrounded by a concert stage. Concerts tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday. Tomorrow, Zach Brown Band, 8:10. These are free concerts. And then Sunday, Post Malone, 8:15. Massive shows. Massive shows. And, of course, don't get confused with the fact.
Don't forget Megan Maroney either. She is on stage before Post Malone.
On Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm. At
I'm
6 o'clock.
I'm a little curious of this. So they have the Zach Brown Band is actually playing while games are going on?
I guess so.
Because the first semifinal will be getting underway, 6 o'clock, and then, or 6:09 and 9:09 are the two start times, right?
6:09 and 8:49.
8:49, okay, which will be 9:09.
Yeah.
Watch. So a ton to get to, ton to talk about today. there's a lot that goes into the Final Four and putting it on, and I got to thinking about this last night. There's a really good article right now. I was driving down to Alabama on Friday, so a week ago tonight, and I got a message from the Star that Dana Hunsinger-Benbow was doing an article on the history of the Final Four in Indianapolis and wanted to know if she could ask me a couple questions about it. And I was very, honestly, like I was kind of honored that they would call and ask me of that. It reminds me sometimes that I've simply lived here a long time. But a really good article by Dana right now that chronicles all of the different Final Fours that have taken place in this town and the history of it. Because, and I made mention of this in that article, I think the same of the Indy 500. The reason I love the Indy 500, and the reason all of you, I would hope, love the Final Four, especially when it's in Indianapolis. There are great moments in history of the Final Four. The Final Four is the ultimate showcase of sporting event. And will that all change at some point? Is NIL going to disrupt and interrupt that? Maybe. We talked to Steve Alford yesterday about it when he talked about how maybe the NCAA eventually goes to a class system or a variation thereof. That sounds a little absurd right now, but who knows? Nobody ever thought we'd be at this point in terms of the name, image, likeness. And with all of the wind of change in college basketball, with all of the fluidity of transfer portal and NIL and prioritizing players that are, like if you look at Illinois, transfer players versus, even though Illinois has a very special true freshman, versus getting a team a la the old Fab Five system of 5 young players and gelling them together. The variations now of college basketball in the wind of change that is taking place with college basketball. The one thing that is not at this point interrupted is the energy and the joy that people in this country get from their NCAA brackets, from the randomness of the tournament, from the great finishes, and from the stage of the Final Four. And so much that goes into that, I started thinking about the great games and moments that have taken place here. And when I think about the Indy 500 and the Final Four, when it's in Indianapolis, those two events to me are so special. Maybe nostalgically so, but they're so special to me because I always go into it just like I do right now, with the expectation and the excitement over the fact that it is quite possible that we are on the doorstep of seeing something that we will be talking about for 30 to 40 years. And that's special. That's cool. The 91 Final Four. I know the 80 Final Four, I'm wearing a T-shirt for it right now, was the first Final Four in Indianapolis, but that was right on the heels of the 79 Magic versus Bird game. So the Final Four, in terms of being a social and cultural phenomenon, was in its infancy. But by 91, when it had moved into the Dome, and you had undefeated UNLV arriving in town, I could still tell you their starting 5. That team was loaded. George Ackles, Stacey Augmon, Larry Johnson, Anderson Hunt, Greg Anthony. They were loaded, and they were undefeated. And they practiced at North Central High School. And Jerry Tarkanian was their head coach. And we got to watch the practice. And Larry Johnson asked me if I could hold on to his Sony Discman while they practiced. And I did. And, of course, midway through the practice, my curiosity got the best of me. The reigning college player of the year, the future number 1 in the NBA draft. And I'm sitting there holding his Sony Discman, and of course, being somebody who grew up in Bob Knights, Indiana, I was convinced that I was holding before me the biggest NCAA violation because I just assumed that some booster bought it for him, because in 1991, it was quite the riches to have a Sony Discman. But he couldn't have been nicer. UNLV couldn't have been better to us. The people involved in the basketball program at North Central. It was awesome. But I popped open the CD because I had to know what CD he was listening to. And over the course of the day, even though I've told the story many times and we'll test his memory, we'll see if Eddie can guess what Grandmama was listening to on CD in the 1991 Final Four.
Was
But
that ma, 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 ma?
no, if you can guess, I'm telling you, I will be highly impressed. I might bring you some Jamaican patties on Monday if you get the answer correct. But the long-winded point I'm making, that Final Four, Vegas gets shocked by Duke, who they'd beaten by 30-plus the year before in Denver. And it happened right here in Indianapolis. And Mike Krzyzewski gets his first. And the national championship game, Duke opens their scoring with Grant Hill with one of the most unbelievable alley-oops you'll ever see. And in 97, Dean Smith coaches his final game in college basketball, a legendary, iconic career, and it happens in Indianapolis. And Tom Izzo finally breaks through and gets a national championship for Michigan State on the back of Mateen Cleaves, who was as good a point guard as you could find in college basketball at that time. And North Carolina returns, but now not with Dean Smith, but with one of his right-hand men and Bill Guthridge, right here in Indianapolis. And Florida, back-to-back titles, one of them here in Indianapolis. And Gordon Hayward and the shot that almost went in, and the screen by Matt Howard. There are great events that take place, and there are potentially great events that are going to take place this weekend that we'll be talking about for 40 years. But I got to thinking about the history of not just that, but the regionals as well. And I thought about when Kevin Ware of Louisville, and it was a horrific visual when Kevin Ware of Louisville in the NCAA regionals compound fractured his leg, meaning it broke in a non-natural breaking point and then penetrated through the skin. And guys on the bench are weeping as they see it. And it was horrific. And yet, there were people on scene for him seemingly immediately, including and I think they were playing Michigan State, but including the opposing trainer and trainers that were there basically waiting in the wings in the moment of something like that. And then I began to think about the behind-the-scenes people that go into putting on an event like this. We talked to Julie Rolash earlier this week about the logistics of putting something like this on. Indianapolis does it better than anybody. And Ralph Reif was the director of putting together those staffs for multiple Final Fours. And when it comes to player safety, player health, player injury, all of those things, there is no team in that. In other words, there's no, it's all team is what I'm getting at. You're not working for a specified team. You're the trainer for Illinois, and something terrible happens right in front of you. We had an official, remember a couple of years ago in the Final Four, that collapsed on the floor. Fortunately, he was okay. But when that happens, you don't say like, oh, okay, well, I'm the Illinois trainer and that's a Connecticut kid. No, the camaraderie that goes into that, but also the support staff that is here on hand from Indianapolis ready to act. And I thought about what all must go into that and how big a task that must be. And so Ralph's going to join us on the program today. Also, yesterday we talked about the fact that Notre Dame has a major player in the transfer portal.
Did you see the news last night, Jake? There was another former Indiana high school basketball player in the transfer portal.
Would that be, are you talking about a Mr. Basketball by chance?
I think so.
Kansas,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Flory Badunga.
Yep.
Now, Flory Badunga, he is entering his name into the NBA draft and the portal. This is where we are headed. But Micah Shrewsbury, the head basketball coach at Notre Dame, going to join us at 2 o'clock today. We can talk about that and what it means, for a Notre Dame, for example. Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday coming up at 2:30 as well. The transfer portal, Eddie, this is one of the things that I want to ask Micah Shrewsbury about. There are, in the movie Hoosiers, remember when he says to Norman Dale, there's two kinds of crazy. One is a guy that goes out and barks at the moon, and the other is somebody that does it in my backyard. And the second one I kind of got to deal with. I'm paraphrasing. When it comes to the transfer portal, there are two kinds of transfer portal candidates. Those that legitimately want out and are seeking greener pasture elsewhere. And the second, which is the one you kind of got to deal with, which is the one that really doesn't have any interest in leaving, but he is seeing what the market value is for himself and also trying to squeeze a little bit more out of the roster where he currently sits. And in Badunga's case, you throw your name into the draft. If you don't like where you're slotted, you go ahead and stay in college, and then you basically make that threat to Kansas to see if they'll blink and say, you know what, here's an extra $200,000. Here's an extra $500,000, whatever it may be.
I think that's what happened last year a little bit, Jake, because you have to remember he went into the portal.
Correct. And then stayed, right?
Yeah.
Now, you get a little bit of donor fatigue with that. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. But I understand it from the player standpoint. I also saw that there was one report that said that the Big Ten now, that it is anticipated going into the transfer portal era here and the basically free agency. We're basically in free agency. And there was one report that said that it's expected that it would cost you in the Big Ten right now somewhere between $10 and $12 million for your roster. Well, Illinois is in the Final Four, and I think theirs was $6 million, right? But, again, it's all about look at the NBA, the NFL, whatever it may be. It's about having the wherewithal to understand and building your roster, where you want to spend money, whether or not you believe that big dollar, big talent automatically equates to, do the 5 best players get to the Final Four or the 5 guys that play together the best? In Illinois' case, veteran players that may not have played with one another for a long time, but they understand how to play the game because they're veteran players. Lot that goes into all of that. Taylor Tannenbaum might join us on the program as well. She was on the call for the NIT semifinals taking place last night. Championship of that will be on Sunday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And, Eddie, I was just thinking as I'm looking out in our parking lot, because people are arriving for the concert and they're paying the parking lot, we should go out and just bring some of these people on. Find out where they're from. Where are you from?
Made on the street interviews?
Yeah, why not?
Is Terry Stacy around? I'm sure she would do that.
Why not? Where are you from? Who you rooting for? Are you just here for the concert?
Although I don't think we're starting to sell the lot until 5 o'clock. So
I don't know. I just saw 4 people getting out of a truck with cowboy hats on.
Okay. Yeehaw.
They look like they had fanny packs.
By the way, Jake, in 20 minutes, if you're listening to us on your phone or in your car or whatever, you don't have anything to do, starting in 20 minutes.
If you're listening to us and you don't have anything to do.
Yes. Final Four Fan Fest, we begin to away tickets for those. We still have a couple more to give away today. At 12:45 for an hour, Trey Kaufman-Wren will be doing a meet and greet and signing outside of Lucas Oil Stadium by Final Four Fan Fest.
If you don't have anything to do,
Yep.
That's why you're listening to this show, right?
Exactly.
Eddie, here's the thing. I don't think that we need to say some sort of a disclaimer that if you're listening to this show, and don't have anything to do. I think the first makes it very obvious that the second is true.
That's pretty factual.
The only reason anybody's listening to this show is because clearly they don't have anything else to do, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's probably accurate.
Hey, what'd you do on Friday? Listen to Aquarium Company. Why? Because I had absolutely nothing else to do.
Yep.
That would be the reason. Yeah, I get it. I totally understand that. And I think all 41 of our female listeners would agree with that as well. Nothing else to do. You at work? Yes. What are you doing at work? I'm listening to Aquarium Company. Why? Well, Al finished the big MacGyver reports, and so I got nothing else to do. I'm just sitting at my desk checking in, right?
Yeah.
Cindy finished the big spreadsheet for the accounting meeting we got on Monday, and they think that I'm still working on it. I got nothing else to do. So I'm just going to listen to this dog and pony show of this guy rambling on about the Final Four and the concerts and people parking in the parking lot wearing cowboy hats. I think if you're wearing a fanny pack walking around, it's pretty apparent you're here for a tourist attraction, right? Have you ever worn a fanny pack, Eddie?
I don't think I have.
They were all the rage in the mid-'80s. Izod came out with this. Anybody else remember this? And actually, in hindsight, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. And why did this go away? Because it was both fashionable and sensible. Does anyone else remember the craze, I'm going to say from 1983 to 1985, the Izod windbreaker rain jacket phase that then morphed into a fanny pack?
Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, perfect. I had a navy blue one. Perfectly sufficient, perfectly efficient, fashionable. I mean, most of what I wear is fashionable anyway. I wear something and people go, that looks great. Well, thank you. I could probably walk around right now in some parachute pants and a Coca-Cola shirt. People be like, that looks good. Yeah, I know. But either way, plenty to talk about in the world of college basketball today. We'll get into some of the NBA discussion as well. Pacers in Charlotte tonight taking on the Hornets. That is a 7 o'clock game, 6:30 pregame. And then one of the fun things about this.
Pre-tip, nice.
One of the fun things about this, Eddie Garrison, because he is manning the controls for that broadcast tonight, and because we are literally right now in the nucleus of the cell membrane that is Final Four activity. So as a result, Eddie has a cot here and is sleeping in this building for 3 days.
That's right.
Because I told you when you park today, you can't leave for 3 days, right?
That's right. Yeah. Pacers tonight, Indiana Sports Talk tomorrow night with Bob Lovell, and then Sunday Pacers at 6, 5:30 pregame. Yeah.
So there's
on Easter Sunday. Yeah.
There's a lot going on there, right?
There is. There is indeed.
When we come back, there is some NFL discussion to be had. We got into a little of it yesterday, but I want to get more into it today. As it relates to, we talk about the portal and NIL from the basketball standpoint of things. What about Pro Day and evolution of how that all works for a program on the college side of things and what we're witnessing before us? I will get into that and elaborate other side. And then again, Ralph Reef joining us about 40 minutes from now on this Final Four Friday edition. Query and Company on the Fan. Hey there, Jake Query. You know what goes great with the concerts that are taking place right here in downtown Indianapolis? What about a Surfside? Ice cold Surfside. Look for the can with the sunset stripes. I'm talking about iced tea with a splash of vodka, lemonade with a splash of vodka. The concerts down here are free, and so too, guess what else is free? Surfside is free of bubbles. No carbonation, so incredibly smooth. Goes perfect when listening to music, watching sports, whatever it may be. Surfside, variety of flavors. You can also buy a variety pack. Look for it wherever you buy your favorite adult beverage, but please be 21 and please enjoy Surfside responsibly.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
21 Pilots will be on stage tonight. One of the free concerts. Do we know what the weather's supposed to be?
It's Indiana, Jake. Do we ever know what the weather's
Well,
going
that's
to
why
be?
I'm stressed out about it. Right?
Cloudy all day. There's a chance of rain at 8 o'clock tonight, but that's about it.
The fella that parked his truck out here with the cowboy hat on, and I think he's with his wife and kids. He's now walked back to his car 3 times in the parking lot. I think these are early goers for the Big 21 Pilot Show. He's pacing in anticipation of the concerts that should take. We should start interviewing these folks. Where are you from? Who are you rooting for? Do you think there are people here, before we get into the college pro day conversation, do you think there are people here? I don't know that you get this as much, but do you think there are, and it would be a higher percentage Purdue, but do you think there are, say, Duke or Florida fans here who bought tickets to the Final Four in full anticipation of being here, and now they're like, well, I have the tickets?
I would say Duke, yes. I don't know about Florida. Like, are you waiting until they're getting closer to the Final Four to purchase your tickets and flights or whatever? If you wanted to go that route, or your hotel. By the way, I'm seeing some pictures, Jake. I don't know what hotel or hotels these are at, but there are apparently Final Four spreadsheets on the bed. Not spreadsheets, but like spreads or whatever. Like there's pillowcasing covers, blankets.
Well, that's pretty cool.
I know.
I have my guess. I mean, the JW Marriott hosted all 68 teams at one time. I mean, think about this. You have Division II, Division III, NIT,
bedspread. That is
4
what I was
teams
looking
that are
for.
here. Yeah, the bedspread, the
Yes,
covering.
thank you.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I would imagine that's got to be the Conrad, right? Conrad or the JW.
Or the JW.
Yeah, one of those two. But either way, exciting weekend, no question about it. As I've read more about the NFL Pro Days, 2 things that came out of that, in particular from Indiana's standpoint, and it is still surreal to me, undoubtedly, to think about the fact that Indiana football, to quote the great Brian Jacobson, it is still surreal, but it's real. When I was in Alabama last weekend for the IndyCar race, and people coming up to me wearing their Roll Tide gear or Auburn, because in Birmingham you kind of get a little of both, and all the conversation was about Alabama football, Auburn football, Alabama football, Auburn football, and they're like, now, and yet, I mean, one guy said, he goes, that Indiana team might be the best team I've seen ever. And I've watched Alabama football since Bear Bryant. They were so clinical. And I watched a Curt Cignetti press conference where he was talking about, and one of our colleagues pointed this out to me, and it's totally true. For every time I've watched Curt Cignetti talk, I've been trying to figure out for 2 years who he talks like. For 2 years, I've tried to figure out who it reminds me of linguistically when he speaks. And it is Barney Fife. When Curt Cignetti stands back and kind of does that lean, and he's about to say something that's like a little bit, kind of 16-0, I mean, can't really do any better. You win 16 and you got the 0, and the 0 you can't improve on that. And the 16 it means you played 16, you won 16. It's like Barney Fife when he's pushing his chest out a little bit about being the sheriff. With the exception of the fact that Cignetti is completely legit and clearly has like the bullet in the chamber, right? At any time, because he's totally locked in. But when when he was talking about, and the spring practice for Indiana was obviously coinciding really with the pro day. And the big star of the pro day for Indiana was D'Angelo Pons. I know that Mendoza solidified himself as the can't-miss number 1 overall pick. But D'Angelo Pons looked like an Adonis out there, and he ran with blazing speed. And then you look at the way that he anticipated the Oregon play, the coverage that he provided. He was a difference maker for them defensively. And I think his stock probably rose the most through this pro day, which is by design by Curt Cignetti of this is not just an opportunity for these guys to show what they can do for the NFL. This is a showcase for Indiana football. And so we are going to do this so that players, it's all, and every school does it, don't get me wrong. But when you can have 20-plus guys out there and the majority, there are certain schools that have a pro day, and you're like, really? There's one guy here that might be a 7th rounder. When you have 20-plus guys and they can go anywhere, many of them second, third, first or second day guys, recruits notice that. People notice that. But while the pro day was going on and D'Angelo Pons was the real star, I then listened to Curt Cignetti talking about getting set for next year. And one of the things he said was, this is the time of year where I'm beginning to inventory to learn every player and what button to push. And I found that to be fascinating because I've talked to people that have played for great coaches, and I've talked to great coaches before about the fact that I think one of the biggest challenges in leading people is understanding the versatility under which people need to be led. Some people react and are motivated by screaming in their face. Some people react and are motivated by constant pats on the back. Some people react and are motivated by no one saying a word to them and them being forced to just kind of figure it out on their own and learning from that. And it's a coach's job to understand the different buttons to push and the different ways that a player reacts. And if you look at the Indiana team from a year ago, it is very apparent. It felt like every single player on that field was literally almost like a robot who had been perfectly timed to unwind and be let go right when it was needed. Every one of them. Everyone knew their specific role. Everyone knew exactly what it was that they needed to do, when they needed to do it, and how they needed to do it. And I think so much of that goes back to the coaching, which led me to thinking about and the epiphany of the fact that D'Angelo Pons was the real star amongst the pro day. You heard Bob Kravitz say it yesterday with us as well. And yet, he was a JMU guy. Elijah Surratt, a James Madison guy. Transfer guys in, guys that started at a non-Division I school. And yet, they were able to come with Curt Cignetti, and because they bought in that much to what it is that he's doing, and elevate themselves to the point where they're the talk of the pro day. And when Cignetti is looking right now at spring practice, I am fascinated to see, and we won't know for certain, but I'm fascinated to see how a new group that does not have all those JMU transfers to say, look, now he has a title to point to and say, you better buy in. But sometimes guys just want to look at the leaders and say, what am I getting into here? And you had a group of players, even though Cignetti was only in his second year at Indiana, and even though Mendoza was in his first, Mendoza was a mature player, but you had a group of players like D'Angelo Pons who had gone through that system and given him multiple years of figuring out what buttons to push and when to push them. And now that you reload with a new quarterback, a new number one receiver, do you have the time to figure out and learn exactly which buttons it is and when? And my answer would be yes. I would assume he does because the guy can flat coach. but it's one of the things that is the most intriguing to me about the upcoming season. Not their schedule, not the pressure of defending national champions, but rather how much buy-in is there, and has Cignetti had enough time with transfer portal guys to figure out exactly when, where, and how on the button pushing. The, of course, complication of all of this comes into the fact that whenever you get portal guys, transfer guys, you don't know exactly who and what you're getting at all times. And that is true as well in college basketball. And Eddie just mentioned there are a couple of huge names in the portal. And what can that mean, not just for the game, for the future of it, but in addition to that, locally speaking, those that may bounce back home? We'll explain next. Hey there, Jake Query for Chicago's Pizza. ChicagosPizza.com. You know, you heard me talking about my pride in Indianapolis when the Final Four comes here. I love places that take pride in Indianapolis as well. That's the case with Chicago's Pizza. Started locally right here back in 1979. Speaking of Final Fours, that was a big year for that. And Chicago's Pizza ever since has continued to grow within central Indiana and the state of Indiana with a story in every slice and folks that are working right here in Indiana and helping out communities, being a part of fundraising, all of that with the pride, of course, in making the very best pizza, the freshest of toppings, the very best quality of cheese, and that hand-rolled crust that is made in-store every single day at Chicago's Pizza, and that includes their fresh-made breadsticks. You get all of that. Pizza variety, breadsticks, and a salad bar with all the fixings and the best dressings, and a soft drink for just $13 as part of their lunch buffet, which you still have 46 minutes to get in right now for it because it runs until 1:30 each and every day at Chicago's Pizza and their 19 Central Indiana locations. And don't forget the family meal deal. Perfect for the Final Four. 2 medium, 1 topping pizzas and a fresh order of breadsticks for just $25. Chicago's Pizza. Find a location near you at chicagospizza.com.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Several people, and I've told the story many a time. One of my favorite stories, actually. I've had weird stuff happen to me. I'm the first to admit it. I've got this like Forrest Gump streak of luck that happens to me. But several people have asked or guessed what CD it was that Larry Johnson was listening to at the 91 Final Four. And the most common guess amongst people my age that know of the music of the era, the most common guess that people give is Ghetto Boys. Because Larry Johnson was a native of Dallas. Ghetto Boys were from Houston. Larry Johnson playing for UNLV. And again, 91 Final Four. I'm leaving school on this day. It was Friday. Leaving school, and we're walking down the hallway, and they're putting up newspaper over the windows of the basketball, of the gym. We're like, well, why are they blacking out the gym? And they said, well, UNLV's on their way here. They're about to practice. What? And so they said, well, and Jerry Tarkanian, they got off the bus. My buddy Mike Byron had taken a picture of Jerry Tarkanian. I don't know how he did this. It was masterful. He took a picture of Jerry Tarkanian in 1991 and the headshot of Tarkanian and put it on and somehow managed to work it into his driver's license. So Mike Byron's driver's license, the picture of it was Jerry Tarkanian. And Jerry Tarkanian got off the bus at UNLV, and Byron's like, hey, coach, check this out. And Jerry Tarkanian looked at it, and I'll never forget. And he had kind of an Elmer Fudd type. He looked at it and just said, like, well, that's pretty good.
If I can guess this correctly with the next Bounce Back song, Jake, what's my prize?
Jamaican patties.
Okay.
And believe you me, that's a fabulous prize. So Tarkanian looked at it and just said, that's pretty good, kid. And handed it to him, and they went. And so then Tarkanian went up to, I don't know if it was Dr. White or who it was, but basically said, like, hey, if these guys are with the basketball program, they can watch practice. And I was just the radio guy, and so we went in to watch practice. There were probably 15 of us, maybe 20, and we got to sit and watch the practice. And I've told this before, but it's amazing to me. That 91 team, which was loaded, they scrimmaged for like 2.5 hours, and the starting five were on offense the entire time. It was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. And we're sitting there, not literally, I've seen other unbelievable things, but it was pretty remarkable. And Larry Johnson, at any rate, after they were warming up, he had a Sony Discman, which were really rare at the time. If you had one, you put it on a pillow in your passenger seat. You could theoretically drive without it skipping. And you had a cassette, like, transferable thing that you put into your cassette player, and now you could listen to CDs in your car, and it was mind-blowing. But he said, hey, can you watch my CD for me, my Discman? And I said, sure. And it sat in my lap, basically sat there, because I was like, this is Larry Johnson's grandmama, don't touch it. He hadn't been grandmama yet, but he was about to be the number one pick in the draft. Everyone knew it. He was the college player of the year. And finally, about an hour and 45 minutes into the practice, my curiosity got the best of me, and I hit the open button to see what CD it was he was listening to. And there it glistened back at me, and I've never forgotten it. It is not the Ghetto Boys. But the transfer portal now, instead of having your starting five on offense for 2.5 hours during a practice, you just want to maintain consistency of getting any of your starting five back the next year because everybody now goes into the portal. I'm using air quotes on everybody. There are a number of players with Indiana ties that are available theoretically. Now, if you had to guess, Eddie, and Purdue, and I'm going to use Indiana as the example, and I know that Purdue is the better basketball program.
Right.
Purdue's coming off of a whisker within a Final Four. Matt Painter has it absolutely rolling, and I think people are well aware of the fact that I love everything about what Purdue stands for and what they do. And we can sit here and discuss and debate until the cows come home, you know, the merits of Purdue basketball in terms of can they, you know, totally get it done and, you know, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the ceiling? I love what they're doing, and a big part of what they do is the fact that they have used portal, and they've used NIL, but they have not relied on it.
Right.
The challenge and the difficulty and the danger in relying on it is what you know is this. let's just say for the sake of the discussion, and I'm going to use Indiana as an example, but let's say for the sake of discussion that Indiana says we're going, and we know they're going to have to rely heavily on portal. I mean, they have some recruits coming in, but they now have essentially a general manager in Ryan Carr whose job is to figure out who they can get, where they can place them, how they're going to mold together. So, in that way, they look at players that have Indiana ties that might have grown up being aware of Indiana and whatever else. And let's just pretend that still matters. Let's pretend that still matters and that these are not guys that are like, no, it's about money. It has nothing to do with what school I grew up watching. And I have no idea with these individuals that I'm going to mention. I don't know anything about these people as young men. I just know that these are players whose names apparently are in the transfer portal. Trey Singleton, who was a really good player at Jeffersonville, went to Northwestern, had a nice freshman year, averaged, I think, 8 points a game. Good player. And was a really good player in high school. You know, helped Jeff to the state finals, obviously. I think they won the state championship, right?
They did in 2025, yeah.
He is in the portal from Northwestern. Another kid from Jeff, Michael Cooper, who's at Wright State.
Yeah.
Put up 14 a game, right?
Yep.
Now, Horizon League player, does that mean that did Indiana look at it and go, hey, we kind of learned our lesson on some guys that looked like they were going to be elite level players, but they came here and, they were okay, but you need to up it a notch. But is that a piece that they could go after? Two of the big ones. Probably the biggest, right? I mean, the first one being, and he's got everything that you would want, Jalen Harrelson. A former 5-star recruit, Notre Dame, 16 a game as a freshman. I mean, an elite level player, 6'7", can defend, play on the wing, all of it. And then Flory Badunga, the former Mr. Basketball at Kansas, who I think has like an Oscar Tshiebwe type feel to him. Really good rebounder, really good rim protector, decent pick and roll, not necessarily a play from 10 feet out kind of guy. And may be well headed to the NBA for probably a late first, but more likely early second round pick.
I just don't know, Jake, like, when you're Flory Badunga, he's listed at 6'9", and he doesn't really put up outrageous rebounding numbers as a center. He doesn't, like, as you mentioned, he doesn't score outside of the rim. Like, it's his offensive game is putbacks, dunks, rim runs, layups on rolls, and gets to the foul line on occasion. It's very similar to Trace Jackson Davis. You know, after Trace had a great sophomore year at IU, he tested the waters, ends up going back to Indiana for 2 more years, and it's kind of like the same thing. They asked Trace to work on his jump shooting to be able to spread the floor a little bit, and that's something Flory Badunga just doesn't do.
Right. Well, Badunga, again, all of these guys, I mean, Harrelson would be the centerpiece of a team. If you were to get all these guys together, and I'm strictly speaking in hypotheticals, the one challenge you get with that, and this is the trick of it all, what you know is that you are getting guys that are willing to test the waters to go elsewhere and up their pay grade a year later. And I get it. That is well within the right. I'm not damning them for it at all. But if you look at what Purdue's done, for example, Purdue has been able to consider. Now, but Jake, they haven't gotten to a Final Four. I get it. They did with Zach Edey, but you get what I'm saying. The Purdue and it may be Purdue might have hit the limit on number of times they can do this, but you got to have roster consistency. You've got to have some foundation there of players that are core players for you, and then you use the portal to accentuate. If you are trying to do your roster entirely off of portal guys because you have the most money to spend or the biggest booster allotment, then what you're doing is essentially making a house of cards, because a year later you're going to be right back in the same spot. Because if a guy's like, yeah, man, I went from Wright State to Indiana, and I went from 400,000 to 1.2. I'll bet if I go from Indiana to Carolina, I can go from 1.2 to 1.8, whatever. That's the danger you run into. I think it is an excellent tool to get you in the right direction, but if you begin to become totally reliant on it, look at what happened to John Calipari. Eventually, John Calipari at Kentucky, who's a brilliant coach, but Kentucky fans got tired of it after a while because they're like, and then it was one and done's, not portal guys, but it was like, look, we're just redoing a roster every single year, and by November we know whether it's going to work or not, and by January I know whether to check out or stay invested.
What's going to happen, Jake, is Darren DeVries may get one of the four that we just highlighted being from Indiana. He may get none. He may get two or whatever. And there's going to be that group of IU fans that are going to be like, dude, what the heck are you doing? Like, this is sitting to you on a silver platter. Like, well, maybe those players don't fit what Darren DeVries is wanting to do.
Right. I do think DeVries is a good coach. I do. Lot that goes into putting together a Final Four, not just a team, but a Final Four itself, including a collaborative effort to make sure that everybody's safe. Ralph Reef, who we've had on the show several times, can talk about that. He has headed up the training staffs for Final Fours multiple times over the years. He's going to join us about 15 minutes from now. Taylor Tannenbaum, I think, who's going to be on the call for the NIT championship, going to join us bottom of the hour.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Now, Eddie, clearly you've heard me tell the story before.
Like once or twice.
This is correct. Larry Johnson was listening to REM Green, which was a great album. But that's what he had in his Discman.
Now, where do you get Jamaican patties, Jake?
Patties of Jamaica. You've never had them, right?
No.
I'd like to ask this question, if I may. And good afternoon to you, by the way. Ralph Reef coming up just about 10 minutes from now. Actually, a little over 5 minutes from now. On this Final Four Friday, tons of events going on. Concert tonight, 21 Pilots headlining it. That is a free concert at the American Legion Mall, just to the south of where we are broadcasting right now. And a huge weekend of basketball with, of course, the Final Four on Saturday. All of the championship games, including the NIT championship, coming up on Sunday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and then Monday it will be the national championship game. Eddie, in the time that you and I have done this show, speaking of with your inquiry there, I'd like to know this. I'd like to know the number of different things, and you can just give me one of them. I mean, there's a ton to choose from. Tell me one thing where I introduced you to something that changed your life, whether it be a theory, whether it be an actual food item, a beverage, something where I introduced you to something or made something accessible to you, and you said to yourself, I will never again be the same.
The list is pretty short.
Okay.
We've got Java House.
Okay.
Surfside.
Yep.
And the Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Okay. Yeah, you were familiar with Chicago's Pizza, although when they brought it in, you managed to polish that off quickly, right?
Yeah.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High is a good example. I introduced you to that and it changed your life. You literally.
Now, what's not on the list are those god-awful shrimp chips.
Those are fabulous. And you know what? Thank you for mentioning that.
Which reminds me.
I'm going to Long Beach in 2 weeks. I'll bring them back for you.
The ketchup Lays, top of the list.
Those are awesome, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to put Patties of Jamaica in the same category as the ketchup Lays. Now, let me explain. Patties of Jamaica, 52nd and Allisonville. Henry was a man from Jamaica who, while in Jamaica, met his wife who is Asian or of Asian descent. And in 1978 or so, they immigrated to the United States, and Henry opened up Patties of Jamaica at 52nd and Allisonville. This studio is bigger than Patties of Jamaica. And at that time, you went in and they sold one thing, patties, which is basically a kind of a subtly cheese-flavored pita bread with a curried Jamaican meat in the middle, a Jamaican beef in the middle. And when I was in high school, middle school, we would go all the time. They were 75 cents a patty. You left there if you spent $5 there, you were basically not eating for like 2 days afterwards because you ate so many patties. They're the best. Henry passed probably, I'm going to guess, 8 years ago. And his son, Stefan, is brilliant, Purdue graduate. Stefan runs it now. And in the spirit of his father, when you walk in, Stefan greets you with the biggest smile on his face and simply says, hello, my friend. Then when you buy your patties, he gives you the price. $4, my friend. And everyone is Stefan's friend. And anybody who's been in there, it's the greatest guy grub of all time. And you just go in, and the best part about it, they have 2 little tables in there, and it's not uncommon if you go in and eat patties that somebody else comes in that also has the crave, and they sit down, and now you're sitting having lunch with a total stranger, and you're bonding over patties. And you walk away, and you're like, well, if that guy's Stefan's friend, which he must be because Stefan said, hello, friend, then that guy's my friend too. It is literally the most wonderful, like, little nook and cranny joint in Indianapolis.
Yeah, Greg texted in the show that said we need to stop doing the show like right now to go get some patties.
Yeah,
also suggested to do a remote from the little dining area.
I'm telling you. The patties are the best. It's the best. It'll change your life.
Greg from Avon, he's got 3 Gs, which is pretty cool. He texted back when we were talking off the start of the show at noon about nothing to do, Jake. He said, I'm on vacation and I've already picked up all the dog poo in the yard, so here I am.
That actually, there is no greater, there is no greater, like, just illustration of this program than that.
I would agree.
We should do a promo of that. Query and Company.
That should be the new
to
show
3 on
motto.
the Fan. Talking sports, having fun, educating, and entertaining. After you pick up the dog poo, join us until 3. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. That's what we do, right? And I'm not even, and do's not spelled D-O-O either, right? Ralph Reef is going to join us in just a second here because Ralph, I thought about, and the thing that most popped into my mind was and it was the regionals. It was not the Final Four. But in the regionals, a couple of years ago, when I believe his name was Kevin Ware of Louisville, had the compound fracture in his leg, and literally, like, the training staff, there were trainers on him immediately. And I noticed that it wasn't just the Louisville training staff. There were others that were there that were on site. And I realized, you know what? We have so many wonderful training facilities in Indianapolis that I'll bet they collectively and collaboratively work kind of behind the scenes. And I can only imagine when you're talking about, you know, in the case of the Final Four, you have athletes playing within it that, I mean, they are investments, right? I mean, many of them, because this is a step before. They want, you know, many of them, basketball is going to be their livelihood. They're going to make a significant amount of money in doing it. And so you've got to, there is a pressure and expectation and expertise that goes into making sure that those athletes are ready to go at all times. And I don't know how much of that is preparatory stuff and how much of that is just being there in case of an emergency type stuff. But Ralph Reef first began in terms of the Final Fours themselves. He managed the team medical services for 7 different Final Fours. The 1980 Final Four, which was the first here in town. The 1991 Final Four at the Hoosier Dome. The 97, 2000, and 2006 Final Fours in the RCA Dome, also the Hoosier Dome. And then 2010 and 2015 at Lucas Oil Stadium. He joins us now on the guest line. Ralph, it's a pretty special time when the Final Four comes to town. I love everything about it, and I'm assuming it also gives you that same jolt of energy.
Oh, no question about it. I'm just getting out of downtown after some visits with some friends in the basketball world, and yeah, it's a crowded space, and on a day like today, everybody's expecting to win, so everybody's in a good mood.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, Ralph, before we get into the training stuff, one of the real fun things about this Final Four, you know, there are always, and I've said this before, usually there's one team in the Final Four that truly has this, like, just got hot at the right time, Cinderella-type run, but you kind of know that maybe they've hit the ceiling. I think any of these 4 could win it. I mean, I think that's the thing that's really exciting is if you were to tell me, you know, Illinois is probably the least favored, if you will. But if you told me Illinois won it, I'd go, yeah, I get it. I mean, the way they can shoot the basketball, I think it's wide open, which is what makes it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 4 great teams, no question about it. 4 great historic programs.
Okay, so let's talk about the team aspect of it, okay? Ralph Reef is my guest from Executive Performance Solutions. Of course, longtime athletic trainer and medically involved with, as I'd mentioned, 7 Final Fours. Let's just say for the sake of discussion, we'll take the Illinois-Connecticut game. So when Illinois and Connecticut are playing in that game, you obviously have the training staff for the 2 respective universities that are there to assist and accommodate should a player on their roster have some sort of an issue, God willing. But are there others that are there on standby that are independently brought in by the city or by the NCAA to assist in that capacity?
Yeah, Jake, there's a sort of cascading organizational chart, if you will, of taking care of the teams. And so to narrow that down and that sort of broad statement, my responsibilities were always medical in aspect of supporting the medical staff that's with each team. And of course, when you get to the Final Four, everybody involved medically with that basketball team is either in the house, meaning they've got a ticket, or they're credentialed on the bench. So we're supporting them. The other aspect of that, we support the managers. We help with team services, everything from making sure the locker rooms are fully stocked with sponsored beverages and towels and all the amenities that you would want to have for your team. Because remember, all four teams are visitors, if you will. They don't have their own stuff. And so it's a lot of build-up. There's a lot of equipment, bringing in everything from exercise bicycles to cold tubs to create ice immersion for the athletes. And then we provide backup physicians who might have an expertise in, let's say, hydration with putting in an IV. So I might have a paramedic involved. And plus all your local physicians have access to the hospital's X-ray, pharmacy, and so forth. So you build a system that we can call. If somebody gets a scratch to their eye, I've got an ophthalmologist on call or in the facility who can manage that eye injury. So the teams just literally don't have to worry about anything.
How many total people, like auxiliary individuals, are we talking about that are not directly, let's say, arriving with said teams, but are there as medical support staff?
I would typically work with, and this grew over the years, right? In 1980, it was Ralph Reef, and we provided nothing, right?
Right.
I was there as a student. I was a student at University of Indianapolis. I was David Craig's student assistant, longtime athletic trainer for the Indiana Pacers. They were on the road. I basically unlocked the training room in Market Square Arena, and so now. What we do, typically you'd have a list of 12 to 15 people. And again, X-ray techs, ophthalmologist, dentist, massage therapist, and primary care physicians, orthopedic physicians. And then from there, you fill it in with athletic trainers, equipment manager, and folks who can really take care of the locker rooms, take care of the bench, and then we would also have a cadre of paramedics dedicated specifically to the floor. So that list gets pretty long and pretty complex, but it all works very well. I heard you mention Kevin Ware in 2013 with Louisville, and that was sort of the pinnacle of seeing a system work to expert levels.
Yeah, and with that, Ralph, my recollection of that is this, and you can probably fill in the blanks better. I recall something happening along the lines of when Ware had his injury, and it was in front of the opposing, I want to say it was Michigan State, but I can't remember who they were playing. But when he had his injury, if I remember correctly, the first trainer or medical personnel to tend to him was not someone from Louisville. It was from, it might have been either whether it was the Horizon League or Butler or whatever it may be. It was somebody who was not directly on a day-to-day conditioned to work with him. Am I correct in that, or do you recall?
I recall because I was there. So to put that, so it happened right in front of the Louisville bench. The first people to sort of see it were teammates who were sitting at eyeball level to the floor. And then Louisville's athletic trainer came out immediately, hopped up from the bench, threw a towel over the fracture, which was brilliant because there were literally people. My wife and youngest son were sitting in row 4 behind the Louisville bench, and there were people around my family that were vomiting from seeing it happen. And so I happened to be on the opposite corner of the floor, and we had signals, and we practiced all this sort of thing. And so Fred who's the athletic trainer for Louisville at the time, and he had a long stint with the New York Yankees, then came to Louisville and was Coach Pitino's guy, and he put his hand over his head, which was the signal for assistance, and we immediately jumped into order, and once we saw what it was, our paramedics came on the floor, we carted them off, and Jake just, that was a big deal from a medical perspective, and we literally had him off the court, and they only lost, when you add in timeouts and everything, they only lost 6 minutes of playing time. So it seemed like a really long delay, but from a television standpoint, it was not a lengthy delay at all. Our staff, our training, everything worked great on that day, and carted him off and immediately got him into IU Health downtown, where the trauma surgeons were waiting on him.
And then there was also an incident, and Ralph, this may have been, you might not have been working this Final Four, but I believe I'm correct in this. I think it was in Indianapolis when I believe his name is Bert Smith, who was an official, and
right.
he passed out. I believe he had they found out it was a blood clot or something like that, but he passed out running down the floor, and that's another one where, and maybe that's what I'm thinking of, where somebody jumped over a bench to go out and assist him immediately, and it was a trainer that would not have had any direct connection with the officials, correct?
Yeah, that was Dr. Patrick Kersey, Pat Kersey, physician with St. Vincent Sports Performance. That was during the COVID year, and it was in the facility downtown, Lucas Oil, and he collapsed. Pat Kersey, and then two athletic trainers who are working this Final Four, Chad Gabbard and Dave Weichel, were there to assist him, and they carted him off, and he's back officiating. He was well taken care of. His issue was solved, and I've seen him work a number of games this year.
Yeah, super nice guy. I was at an event with him not long after that, and he was obviously grateful, but just really a humble, good official, right? Really humble and nice guy.
Yep.
But I wanted to get to one other thing here, Ralph. Ralph Reef is my guest, talking about the NCAA Final Four and just all of the medical aspect of it, because we talk about, we've talked to you before about everything that goes into the combine, for example, and all the medical aspect of it, and Indianapolis's resources that it has. So the one thing that I guess I became most curious about in thinking about all of the efforts here, let's give a hypothetical here, Ralph, and just say that two teams are, Team A and Team B are playing in the Final Four, and something happens to a player from Team A, and it's fairly traumatic, and it happens right in front of the bench of Team B. Is there some sort of a protocol as to the trainer for Team B that is not a regular trainer for that athlete, but he happens to be the closest in proximity? Is there a protocol of he goes out and immediately assesses until the trainer from Team A can get over there, and then there's an understood deference in terms of who makes the call on what to do and how to handle the situation? Because, I would assume it's an organized chaos. So how exactly is that all divvied up, if you will?
Yeah, you bring up a great point and a great scenario. It's called a medical timeout. So once the final clock starts ticking, so once we're 60 minutes from tip, there will be somewhere in the countdown sheet, there will be a time dedicated for a medical timeout. And that medical timeout is when the team athletic trainers, physicians who are there, and the referees, the officials who are managing the game, we will have a meeting somewhere around the court or on the court, and we will go over those scenarios of, let's say an official goes down, who takes responsibility? If that scenario, like you mentioned, Team B athlete goes down in front of Team A's bench, the closest medical personnel will manage it. If there's blood on the court, what do the ball boys do? Well, they don't manage it. That's managed by team personnel who know how to handle bloodborne pathogens. And so we go through those things, and we identify different places around the court. Something else that we also mention is within our medical protocol, we have a scope of services. So it's not just the players on the floor. It's the credentialed staff that's on the bench, credentialed university officials, so athletic director, president, spouses of those individuals. Our team would have responsibility for those folks. That happened during the college football championship game between Georgia and Alabama. We had a team family member from the coaching staff who became injured in the bleachers, and that became our issue to manage. So all of this is discussed, it's coordinated, and one of the great things about the medical community, man, do people work well together.
Ralph, before we let you go, Ralph Reif is my guest. I wanted to ask you, we are literally, I mean, by the time we know who the national champion is going to be in college basketball, we'll be right on the doorstep of what would be, at that point, I guess, the 4-month mark since the injury to the Achilles of Daniel Jones. At a 4-month mark, that would mean that he basically should or possibly could be where in terms of his recovery, accessibility to movement, etc.
Yeah, he would be in a boot, so some immobilization, and perhaps going to a tier down, a layer down in protection from a full lower leg boot to just an ankle and foot prosthetic that he could wear over a shoe. So he's protected, but still starting to get his full range of motion. So he's pushing off of his toes. He's landing on his heel. And that's where he would be at this point in time. He might be doing some bouncing in a very controlled environment. And so from maybe a flat-footed position is probably throwing a football. So that's where I would suspect him to be at this point.
Ralph, I notice on your website that you've got a photo of you. I would presume it's a grandchild, and you're reading an Elmo book to them. You've got an Elmo, and you're reading an Elmo book to them. Do you ever feel like when you have to talk medicine with me that it's kind of like you're reading an Elmo book? Because you do a remarkable job of making it relatable to, a guy that's ranked 482nd in his high school class academically, which is very much appreciated.
Well, truth be told, that picture with my grandson, I was actually practicing for this show by reading.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And your grandson kept saying, "Smaller words, Grandpa, smaller words." Right?
Yeah. Oh, the joy of my life, man, grandchildren. Wow.
I bet. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, when it comes to Elmo and reading to your grandchildren, I'm always tickled when you can come on. So we very much appreciate it. And great perspectives. Appreciate it as always. Enjoy the Final Four.
Thank you very much.
All right, Ralph Reif joining me on the program. We come back. NIT Finals will also be on Sunday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That stage is set. One of those who will be holding a microphone for it has some familiarity with Indianapolis, Taylor Tannenbaum, who will join us next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
So last night, I was watching that show I've been telling you about, Eddie, that naked show. That British, it's like a normal show on British television. It's like the dating game, but everybody's naked.
Okay.
Now, I watched an episode the other night, and the contestants were all 70 plus. That was a bit of what we say is a tough watch, right?
Okay.
I'm just telling you. It's called Naked Attraction. So I'm watching the show.
Okay.
And as I'm watching it, I'm also, I wasn't particularly interested in this group of nudity that was being brought up. So I'm scrolling through my phone, and I happen to see, our friend Taylor Tannenbaum, of course, formerly at WTHR, that's now with the ACC Network and ESPN. And I see a post that she has mentioning that even though she was calling the games at Hinkle Fieldhouse, she had never seen the movie Hoosiers.
Okay.
And so I paused the naked. I've told you about this Naked Attraction show. Now you can sit here and play dumb if you'd like, but we won't tell anybody that you actually last night at 3:30 in the morning sent me a text that said season 4, show 9.
Okay, now
with
you're
a thumb up emoji.
You're just
I'm
lying.
like, what's going on here?
You're just lying. I was asleep. I was asleep.
So I texted Taylor and actually I called her and I said, "Wait, you've never seen Hoosiers?" And so we had a lovely conversation. And I said, "Well, since you're going to be on the call for the NIT championship, how about coming in the big program?"
I'm sure
joins
she's
us now
appreciating this intro, Jake.
Oh, she's aware of the program.
Our show?
Huh?
Our show?
No, nobody's aware of this show, but she knows about the Naked Brits.
Yeah.
Not Hoosiers, though.
I was not sure where this segue was going, but I'm happy it landed where it did.
Okay, so
you and me both.
No, hold on. It's a very bizarre show because it was on normal television in England, and that's what's weird about it. But Taylor,
It's insane.
you were aware of the show, right?
I am. I don't know where I've seen it before, but then once you start, it's very hard to stop. So I can understand. It's extremely strange. And then you just start judging people. It's wild. It's a wild experience.
That's and I, honestly, and you and I talked about this, but I want to be clear here as to not make so that this doesn't sound uncomfortable. Flippancy aside, it is far more an observation of just the human element of
Yes.
biologically speaking, and then as well like the emotional aspect that comes with people in these uncomfortable situations, and that's what makes the show fascinating, right?
No question. And I'm like, man, those toes really did it for you? I was like, I can't agree with that. Like, it's just an interesting case study.
It is, because they will ask people, well, what attracted you about, John? And it's like, well, I really like, his shoulder blades and the symmetry of his pinky toe. You're like, what? It's
So
totally
weird.
bizarre, right? And in reality,
But
I
to
guess
each
they're
his
just,
own, you know what I mean?
yeah, you're right. To each their own. Now, so let's get to this before we get to the NIT, and welcome back home, by the way. I realize you're a Floridian, but
Thank
you are a
you.
Hoosier.
Yeah.
You have or have not now, did you in any way, shape, or form even dip your toe into the water of Hoosiers last night?
So I fear last night after we hung up the phone, I fell asleep. It was a long day. But with that being said, I have an obligation and duty and desire to watch it. So I will before the championship of the NIT on Sunday, because I know I will inevitably get asked about it on TV, because I knew when I said that last night that this wasn't going to go over well with the people. Now, let me say this. I have seen clips. I have seen pieces. I'll put it on in the background because it's always on TV. But I've never really seen it start to finish.
I get it. And
I know that's really it's really damning as like an honorary Hoosier that I haven't seen the movie. So,
well, the
I
funny thing
understand.
is, how long did you work at THR?
4 years.
So it's not as though you don't have experience with Hinkle Fieldhouse. I mean, I'm assuming you've been to Hinkle Fieldhouse 50 times, right?
A million times for so many different things. And honestly, one of the last times I was there, I was there obviously for Butler, but too, with I think about the COVID tournament, and it was held at Hinkle, and Louisville, it was St. John's played Alabama. Or one of those games. I know Rick Pitino was coaching because his whole Louisville team was back watching him. So, it's definitely a cool place, and I've been there a trillion times, but I just had never seen the movie.
Well, you obviously, came back in this particular situation because you're working the sidelines, right, for ESPN for these games in the NIT.
I am. Yeah, and what an honor. Not lost on me for sure.
It's very cool, for certain. And one of the teams that is a storyline, I think, on Sunday is the fact that Auburn is one, and we get this a lot, right? Where you get the team that there is so much discussion about should they have made the tournament, and they did not, and so they're in the NIT, and here they are in the finals. I don't know as much about Tulsa, to be honest with you. What do we anticipate from this particular matchup?
So I would anticipate, first and foremost, Auburn on paper is a superior team. They're the number one overall seed in this tournament. They were one of the first teams out. There's so many scenarios. If one shot would have went in differently for the Tigers this season, I would assume they'd probably be in the big dance. And then maybe if SMU hadn't said B.J. Edwards was definitely going to be back and he inevitably wasn't in that first four, then maybe the Tigers would have been in over the Mustangs. I don't know. But with that being said, you now have an Auburn team that they didn't come this far to come this far, right? They'd either probably bow out in the first round because they didn't care, or you're going to get this far, you want to win a championship. They're talented top to bottom, and it's Tahad Pettiford, Keyshawn Hall, Kevin Overton. Like, these guys are ballers, and they can play against the best of them. They've gone through an SEC gauntlet. They have the third toughest schedule in the country. But then, you have a Tulsa team that this is everything for them. This is what they're playing for, and they're led by head coach Eric Conkle, who has a ton of experience, and he's in his fourth season at the helm there, and they've really built this thing into a solid basketball program, and they have some dudes who can shoot the three. Like, they get hot from three. Auburn's going to have to combat that, which they can, but, it's one game, and it's a one-game sample size, so we'll see if they can do it. I think that's what you can expect. It's an Auburn team that I think at this point does have a desire to win this championship, to prove those people wrong who thought they were going to lay an egg. Coach Stephen Pearl will tell you that. And you have a Tulsa team led by a veteran head coach in Eric Conkle who, this is everything for them to win a championship. So I think it's going to be a fun battle, but I think ultimately Auburn is the better team on the floor.
Is it odd for you to be in Indy working and staying in a hotel and not just living here?
Yes. Very strange. And also because people ask me, where should I go? What should I do? First of all, it's changed a lot since I left in 22, in a good way. Second of all, there's parts that I just because you live here, you just don't go to certain places. And I'm over on more Monument Circle side where I'm staying right now, but I lived right off Mass Ave. So I was I didn't come except when I was working to this side as much. You know what I mean? It's just so interesting, but it's nice to be back. But yeah, I walked by my apartment today and I was kind of wish I still had a room there.
Did it make you sad? Be honest. Did it make you sad?
Yeah, a little bit. It does, because I love this place. This place meant a lot to me, and I wouldn't be where I am without it. That's for darn sure. But it was really cool yesterday just being back and, being at Butler. You see John Dedman and, the wonderful SID there and the athletic department and just a ton of people, and even ushers. And Chuck Lofton was there, legendary meteorologist at THR. So it was just cool to see those familiar faces, because it really does feel like home to me. So pretty cool. And it's nice to just walk around. It's actually warm out, guys. It's crazy.
I know. I'm just hoping it doesn't rain, but concerts and everything else going on. Taylor Tannenbaum is our guest. She will be on the call for Tulsa and Auburn NIT Championship, Gainbridge Fieldhouse, Sunday, ESPN. You also, Taylor, work with the ACC network primarily. So allow me to ask this. If the Pacers, obviously, the scenario. Indiana is trying to make sure that they stay within one of those top four picks. If they were to not be in the top two, because I do think, we don't know this, but let's just say for the sake of the discussion that Devonta and Peterson in some form are 1 and 2. And the Pacers have a situation where it's Caleb Wilson or it is Cam Boozer that would be, and Acuff may be in the discussion as well. But from the ACC standpoint, of those two, Boozer, Wilson, which one do you think is more intriguing as an NBA prospect?
That's interesting. I think a lot more about Cam Boozer at this point. He's definitely going to have to, elevate his game, and he knows that, and he's as good as they get. He can do it all, and he's grown up in an incredible household with a wonderful mom and Cece, and, of course, dad, Carlos. So he has every tool in his toolbox to be the ultimate NBA player, and he's going to play for a long time. Caleb Wilson is a little bit rougher around the edges, right? And we didn't get to see him on the back end of the season, but man, he is impossible to take your eyes off of when he's out there. He's an energizer bunny. He's a great teammate and truthfully the ultimate competitor. Like he saves every receipt. Anyone who's ever doubted him, and to be honest, I don't think he got talked about enough this season because this freshman class was so star-studded. You can't go wrong with either of them. I think people would be thrilled with Cam Boozer because you know a lot more about him and what he can bring to the table. You know the name. Caleb Wilson, you're going to be sat in a seat at Cambridge if he's on the floor.
And I'm talking about Wilson. Is Caleb Wilson a more of like the finesse wing defender guy, or is he more the holy cow, he just took off from the block and Sean Kemp force guy?
Honestly, both. He can do a little bit of everything. And again, I think his ceiling is high. Like I don't think he's even reached that potential. And I think, you put a couple pounds of muscle on him, get him in the weight room a little more. I think he's the ultimate prospect, and there's just like so much still left to be desired. Like I think there's just so much left on the table that he can add to his game, and it's really for me it's the intangible. But yeah, he can defend, but it's he at some point before he got hurt led the country in dunks. Like this is a guy who can do everything, and he led Carolina to where they were this season, and they were a different team without him, unfortunately.
Well, Taylor, I hope you get a little slice of home while you're here. And again, I know it's not home, but to those of us that live here, we consider it to be part of your home because you made it home here for a while, and you were certainly a part of the fabric of all of it. And I appreciate you squeezing in a little time. And enjoy on Sunday being on that call at Cambridge Fieldhouse.
It'll be awesome. If anyone's here, it's going to be a great game, so I hope some people come out. And I do want to note, I already had my cluster truck.
Oh,
so appreciate that.
There you go.
I did. We ordered it to Hinkle, so everyone got a nice taste. It was great, and somehow, you guys, I just snuck into the NABC convention. I got a pass, and also I'm currently an assistant coach somewhere. Nobody needs to know where, though.
All you got to do, Taylor, just so you know, two things. First off, Eddie, she can get a discount at Cluster Truck by using what code?
Code BIGFAN, $5 off, 25 or more.
And Taylor,
amazing. I will be doing that.
If you are at the NABC, that's the National Association of Basketball Coaches, if I'm not mistaken, right? You've got to walk around in a sweatsuit that has 19 logos, and all you got to do, you walk past anybody, you go, "Hey, coach, you good, coach? You good? Yeah, good, coach. Good seeing you, coach." And then you keep walking.
Coach always flies.
You good, coach?
You don't need to know names here.
That's right. You just say, "Are you good, coach?" And every coach is good. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, just got fired, but good. Everything's good. Okay, good, coach. Good seeing you, coach. All right, Taylor, we'll let you get back to the coaches there, right?
Thanks, guys, and I hope to see you while I'm here.
Look out for Eddie White. I guarantee he's walking around good coaching people, glad-handed.
Please.
All right, Taylor, we'll see you. Appreciate it. Taylor, you see right there in the background, Eddie, did you hear it? You could hear somebody. Good coach? You good coach? Yeah, I'm good coach. You know exactly how that works.
Yep.
Micah Shrewsbury, by the way, one of those coaches that probably is here for that convention.
Are you going to do that to him? Hey, coach, you good, coach? How
I
are
am.
you, coach?
That's exactly how I'm going to do it. He is set to join us tentatively in about 15.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Somebody actually just sent me a text, Nick. Very kind text about enjoying the show, and he came up with a phrase that I think has staying power. I think it's got oomph to it. You ready? You ready for it?
Yeah.
I love listening, he says, Jake, to you and Big Heady. It's pretty solid. Pretty solid, right?
Here's the problem. I don't know Nick. Nick
Correct.
doesn't know me, other than my voice.
Eddie?
How can Nick know I actually do have a big head?
Well, you've confessed to it. When I
No.
asked one time on the air what size hat you wear, you said 8 7/8, and I went, holy cow. Do you have a red storm also, or rings?
It's actually 8 5/8. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. My apologies. Here's the thing. This is what I love about this show. And you don't, and I don't mean this condescendingly when I say you don't realize this, but I do hope that people realize this. If they listen to the show, then they know us, because we're pretty much authentically, we're not playing characters. I mean, this is who we are, right?
It's true.
I mean, we don't come on here and like flip a switch and like turn on an act. It's like that's the beauty of it, is we're just dudes hanging around talking sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, we have the Major League Baseball wager between us. We haven't checked in a while on this.
We just checked in earlier this week, didn't we?
I think, but I can't remember which teams you had. So our listener had the Giants and the A's, and actually I think it is the Giants have started to pick things up a little bit here. The way we do this, each of us got to pick two teams, and we take the cumulative win total. These are amongst the teams that were forecast to have 82 or fewer wins on the year. I took the Guardians and the White Sox. I take the White Sox every year, despite the fact they're terrible, because I have a tradition where Shannon and I go to a White Sox game a year. Eddie, do you remember the teams that you took?
I know I took the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Okay.
I cannot remember who the other team I chose.
I believe the other you had was the Diamondbacks, but let me check.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Allow me to look here. Let's see. You would think I'd have. Okay, here we go. You had the Pirates and the Diamondbacks, correct? Okay, so the Pirates have 3 wins, Diamondbacks at 3. So you're sitting on 6. Not doing too bad, right?
I know.
You've actually picked it up a little bit here. The Giants have 3 wins. The Athletics just 1, so 6-4. I'm sitting on the Guardians, who have 4. White Sox have 1. So you are currently leading 6-5-4.
Oh, look at that. No surprise.
Well, listen. The White Sox, we all knew. I'm giving this to you by taking the White Sox, right?
Okay.
They're terrible. Yesterday, the White Sox got rained out with the Blue Jays, and that's the only reason why they're 1-5 and not 1-6, probably, right? I'm all in on the Blue Jays. Been watching a lot of Blue Jays baseball.
Have you now?
I have.
Yeah, you got MLB Plus?
Yes. Well, I don't know this. Somehow or another on my cable, one day they sent me this little box thing in the mail, and I plugged it in, and all of a sudden, I had everything known to man. Literally everything known to man. I'm watching Bangladesh bocce ball on Tuesday evenings.
Really?
Yep.
Are you trying to become a handicapper for that? Is that why?
No, I just I'm not one of the degenerates during COVID that was betting on Asian baseball.
Korean?
I've gotten completely into the Bangladesh bocce. It's fascinating.
Now, how is that different than like American bocce?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Just a little more spice and an occasional lot. I will say this: a lot of rainouts. That's the problem. A lot of rainouts. So a lot of makeup games, things like that. But very exciting to watch. And
now they are called games. They're not called like matches or meets or anything like that.
They Americanize it for this particular app that I have that I'm watching on. And so I have access to MLB TV.
So what other things are on ESPN 8 The Ocho?
That's the big. Well, no, this is on the Bangladesh bocce is on.
Oh, interesting.
It's Bang TV, which I think a lot of people end up on that erroneously, thinking, and they're not expecting bocce, but that's what they end up watching.
So that's how you got on here.
No,
for
I
the
knew
show.
I knew that I was going for the bocce from the get-go. But that is an app, though, that I think it has thrown a lot of people off, right? And then, if you don't want to watch the bocce, then they also have squash, and that also confuses people because you're watching squash on Bang, and people they completely
Now just don't
different
go down to
audience.
like Southern Indiana, because then that becomes squish.
correct. That's Eddie. That happens south of Washington Street. Yes. So I have MLB TV, but I don't know, truth be told, whether this is just like, how sometimes at the beginning of the year they will do like a trial run. I don't know if it's that, or when I agreed to get this new box they sent me and plugged it in, and then my cable went from $14 a month to $290 a month. So, maybe that's it, and I'm paying for it, and I don't realize it, and I don't know how to do a la carte with this, because there are a couple of the apps and channels that I don't use on the regular. You know what I mean? The Food Network I don't watch. The cooking stuff I don't watch.
HGTV, are you at one of those?
HGTV, not a lot.
Okay.
I see enough Bravo just in the background, and Shannon likes the TV really loud because she does stuff throughout the course of the day. So when I start
I bet
driving,
that drives you nuts.
what's that?
I bet that drives you
It
nuts.
does. When I start driving down the street to get to our house, I get about 2 houses away, and I can already hear the Real Housewives of whatever county. And then I walk in, I'm like, what is going on in here? We just have very sensitive hearing. No, I don't.
She's not wrong.
I don't. What do you mean?
You have very sensitive ears.
That's good. That's better than going deaf, right?
Yeah, that's right.
How did you know that drives me crazy?
Because I know you.
See, that's because it's just like the listeners of this show. You get to know us by listening to this program.
Back at the old studio, where the floor would creak, that would bother you, and you'd panic if that was going over the radio.
That was very loud.
Except it wasn't going over the radio.
It sounded like we were doing the show from the Addams Family house. Sun is out, by the way. Peering out a little bit here. Again, if you're just joining us, big concerts, Final Four coming up tonight. It is 21 Pilots, Keshi and Joseph. Did we figure out the last name for Joseph?
No, I don't think we did.
Joey V. He takes the stage at 4:30, right at the American Legion Mall, directly behind where we are right now, just to the south of us.
The other question that Nick had, by the way, on the text line, he said that I thought they were playing the NIT final at Hinkle. He said Quarry just mentioned Cambridge for their final on Sunday. Which is it? The NIT was playing their semifinal games at Hinkle last night. The championship game is on Sunday, Easter Sunday, along with Division II and Division III.
At Cambridge.
Championship.
Yes.
At Cambridge, yes.
So my apologies that I didn't clarify that. And to Nick's defense, last night when I turned on and watched some of the game, I said to Shannon, I go, yeah, this is at Cambridge. And she's like, that's not Cambridge. And then I'm like, well, oh, wait, this is Hinkle. And then it dawned on me, okay, the semis are at Hinkle, and then the championship will move to Cambridge. And that's how that pans itself out.
And one ticket will get you into all 3 games.
Which is really cool, right?
Yeah.
This from Nick. Guys, I also have a very large head, but not like Big Heady. Big Heady is great. What a nickname. I mean, you got the Big Hurt. I'm trying to think of other nicknames that begin with Big, but Big Heady is fabulous. He actually said Big Head Eddie, and I morphed it into Big Heady. You should trademark that, Eddie. It's a very arduous process,
Wasn't
though,
there
I will warn you.
Wasn't there a band named that?
Big Head Todd and the Monsters.
Yes.
Graduates of Columbine High School in Denver.
Thank you.
Todd, I told you, Shannon went to high school with him. Her brother was really good friends with Todd. I said, what was he like? And she said, cool guy. And then the band took off, and he changed a little bit. Apparently, got kind of a big head.
This is from Pete Thamel and Jeff Borzello of ESPN. Arizona head coach Tommy Lloyd has agreed to a new deal to remain at Arizona. He announced that it's a 5-year deal with Tommy Lloyd, making him one of the 5 highest paid coaches in college basketball. So we can squash that rumor.
So North Carolina back to the drawing board, it would seem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Micah Shrewsbury is the head coach at Notre Dame and is set to join us next. Hey there, Jake Query for Surfside. It's not a seltzer, it's Surfside. Iced tea with a splash of vodka, lemonade with a splash of vodka. The blueberry lemonade has been doing absolutely fantastic since hitting the market, and they have new products coming out for the summer you're going to absolutely love. I'm talking about the very best of adult beverage, 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar, no carbonation, so smooth, and a wide array of flavors. Surfside, look for it wherever you buy your favorite adult beverage. Ask for the can with the sunset stripes. Please be 21 and consume responsibly.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
2 o'clock hour in Indianapolis. For that matter, it's the 2 o'clock hour everywhere in the Eastern time zone. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice you hear on this program, we call it Query and Company. They had a marketing firm that sat for months coming up with that name. And, of course, it is Final Four week here in Indianapolis. And joining us now on the program, he has just completed his 3rd season as the head coach at Notre Dame after 2 at Penn State. And, of course, a number of different programs throughout the state of Indiana. Micah Shrewsbury joining us on the program. We just said that during Final Four week, whenever you see a coach, you walk past and you go, "Hey, coach, you good, coach? Everything good, coach?" So therefore, that's how I'm going to greet you. You good, coach?
I am good. Yeah. I'm sitting in the convention center now, So you can imagine the amount of greetings like that that are happening
Yeah.
at this moment currently, even with me on the phone.
Every coach wearing a sweatsuit with 3 different emblems of the school and then carrying a cup of coffee and then saying, "Hey, coach, you good coach." That's how it works, right? So that said, there's a lot that – and I appreciate your time, man, and I want to get to this to begin, and that is – the opportunity in this weekend, I have always kind of considered this like a coaching convention where probably you're maybe picking the brains of some guys or, I don't know that you're in the situation of staff and that kind of thing, but there are important things that can take place this weekend. What is, from a coaching perspective, the overall, significance of being here and the things that can come out of this weekend if you are not coaching in it?
Yeah, I think, for us, this is our coaches convention, right? So a lot of personal development happens, but you also, as at different levels you grow to as a coach, there's different involvement in each thing. So, as a young coach, you're getting here for the first time. Maybe you're doing some of the clinics or watching some of the coaches present. Maybe you're, trying to see who's got a GA job and you're tracking down a head coach to talk to him. But as you get a little older now, this is my, like you said, 5th year now as a head coach. I'm on the NABC board. So sitting in meetings yesterday, going through meetings today with the NCAA and Ethics Coalition and head coaches meetings. We're talking about a lot of issues that are affecting our game and how can we as coaches do what we need to do to help change those.
Okay, you just walked right in perfectly, Coach, and I appreciate it, to one of the things that I thought you would be an excellent resource to discuss, and that is just, and I don't think it's necessarily always a bad thing, but the reality is that there are these winds of change that are sweeping through college basketball between the portal and when the portal should open, the NIL money, whether or not that should be governed or capped. I mean, all kinds of things that are going on. From your perspective, what would you say is the biggest challenge facing college basketball today?
I think the biggest challenge that we have is, and this has been not just today, but throughout college basketball, there's a lot of bad actors that are still involved in it. That are driving a lot of the issues, right? Maybe driving a lot of the transfers or driving a lot of the NIL issues that we're trying to eliminate. But it's probably never going to happen because before all this happened, these guys were still involved.
So you mean like intermediaries, right? Like mercenaries
that are – a lot of intermediaries, yes. So they've always been there. But now they're wearing different name tags in what they're doing. So how do we help to do what we need to do to take care of these guys and keep the focus on the game, right? Like we changed the date of the transfer portal and I love the freedom that these guys have, but how about celebrating the season that college basketball has had? This is going to be one of the best seasons from start to finish that we've had in a long time. A tremendous Final Four, 4 great teams, and that championship's going to end on Monday, and all the talk is going to go to the chaos that's going to start on Tuesday instead of us celebrating what great season we just had.
Which of these 4 teams do you feel has the fewest flaws?
Wow. I think, and a lot of people will probably say this, I think UConn and Illinois are really good, and I think that's going to be an unbelievable game. I think the Michigan-Arizona game is going to be points galore because of the way they're going to attack each other, attack the rim, get to the free throw line. I just think with, Michigan's size and depth, the teamwork that they play with, I think they are the team that probably has the fewest flaws.
In looking at, and obviously coaching through in the league you're in, you see, you didn't see, and I don't recall if you saw any of these 4 directly. You obviously, I'm assuming, saw Duke and Carolina both over the course of the year. Carolina didn't get in, but the reason I ask, did you see, and I should be looking at the schedule right now, did you see Caleb Wilson before he was hurt?
We did, yes. No, we played him. He was tremendous. Had an unbelievable year. Had a great game against us, and it was actually noteworthy because I was on the staff of the USA basketball in the summer, and he was one of the guys that had gotten cut. And after the game, he shook my hand and said, "Coach, thanks for motivating me." I was like, "Hey, I don't think you needed that motivation."
Is he the reason I ask, Micah, is just on a side note, obviously assuming that he goes in to the draft. We don't know that yet, but he and Cam Boozer both are players that would be in the mix for Indiana should it hold on to one of its top 4 picks. And I think we have a pretty good idea of what kind of player Cam Boozer is. There seems to be more enigma around Caleb Wilson because of the injury. Is he a down-low force player or a more of a wing, kind of the 3D guard guy? Which way do you see him?
Yeah, he's a little mix of both. Didn't shoot a lot of threes. Didn't shoot a ton of threes, made some, but wasn't a high volume guy. Didn't shoot a great percentage, but that'll happen some with freshmen. But he faces the basket a lot. So, whether that was through a post up, near the block, off the block, out near the 3-point line, he handles the ball. He's very fast and electric with his athleticism, finishing way above the rim. But he can score with his back to the basket. He's a good passer. He and Henry Vasar played a lot of high-low together. So I think the NBA game's going to suit him because of his speed, his ability to handle the ball and pass. He'll have more space to play with as well at the next level.
Micah Shrewsbury is my guest, the head basketball coach at Notre Dame. Coach, obviously I know this year, and you had injury. There's no doubt about that. And the year probably did not go as you were hoping or anticipated. Now that you've been through 3 seasons at Notre Dame, how do you assess just the way this year went and where your program kind of goes from here?
Yeah, obviously we were disappointed in how we finished this season. So we're looking forward to getting back and getting going again. And, injuries were a huge part of it. That's part of college basketball right now is being able to build depth. I think some of the teams that you see that are able to use either the transfer portal or NIL to a certain level, it's to build their depth to withstand some of those injuries that they have because they have a lot of power behind it still. So, you got to have good fortune. You got to be able to continue to play the game the right way. So that's something for us as we continue to move forward. We're chomping at the bit to be better and get better. And that's something that, the Notre Dame fans deserve. And that's something that every single day, that's what I'm pushing towards. And, we're hoping that next year is going to be our best year yet.
Were you surprised, or could you kind of illuminate us on the process of Jalen Harrelson going into the transfer portal and just maybe the conversations that did or did not take place with that, or what your anticipation is with it?
Yeah, I think at this time in college basketball, you're not really surprised with anybody that makes a decision to stay or go, and especially go. Like leaving is in vogue right now. If you look, we get the tweets every day, so you're almost immune to it. Of that someone is leaving. It's not a surprise, and you see great players across the country that are going to enter, into that. Like for as a coach, it's disappointing because you put the time into it and you want to see it through and you want to keep developing these kids, but you want what's best for them at the end of the day. And if that's what they feel is best for them, then you let them move forward and keep going towards their career. And then you pivot to what's next in your program and wish them all the best. And, I love coaching him. Jalen was a great kid, somebody that we enjoyed being around. I think he's got a bright future, and I thought he had a really great year for us. I thought he was going to have an even better year next year. But unfortunately, it just won't be here for us.
So you think definitively that means, because there are some coaches that I don't know if you have this line of it of, hey, if you throw your name in the portal, I understand it, but there's no coming back from that. Is that a fair statement?
for the most part, with everybody, right? That's usually how it is because nobody's really testing, right? It's not the NBA draft where people might put it in their statement of I'm open to coming back, but that pretty rarely happens. Once these kids go into the portal, they pretty much know, that they're not coming back. Sometimes they may even know where that next destination is before the portal's even open. So, that stance is pretty well known on both sides that, once you go, that's
right.
Usually a decision has been made that you're not returning.
Did you have discussion with them, or was it one of those where you got the Twitter alert like the rest of us?
No. These conversations have happened, between us, our staff, Jalen, his family, our general manager, whatever. So we had discussions about it. We had talked about it. I think every coach gets a chance, at the end of the year to, kind of say their piece and talk about it, and people make decisions. So it wasn't a surprise that when I saw it on Twitter yesterday, it was not a new development.
I'm curious of this. Micah Shrewsbury's my guest, and I appreciate the time and the candor, Coach. From an outside perspective, what fascinates me is where we are headed in terms of, do you build a roster by going portal players first and then complementing it with freshmen? Do you build a roster by trying to get as many homegrown guys that you're maintaining from year to the next and accentuating it with portal? Or are we entering a world where it literally is going to be roster rebuild every single year for every program? And just finding the balance of that. What is your approach to that?
As you go through it now and the more years you get into it, I think it's pretty much going to look like a portal first thing for everybody. Very rare is the days of the, that we just saw with the Braden Smith, the Fletcher Lawyer, the Trey Kaufman-Renn, the Alex Caravan, those guys that have stayed at one place for 4 years. Those guys are going to be few and far between. And I think, who you can keep is really important. And there are going to be some guys like that can continue to push your culture forward of what you want your program to be. But this day and age of college and the fans getting a chance to know these guys and know who, see this guy come in, and now you're going to see him at senior day. Now senior day is going to be probably a 1-year proposition with a lot of these kids, which is sad. And it's different from a lot of us coaches, where we started. But you also have to adapt to what's happening. And this is the way of college right now. So you have to adapt and move with it.
What's a realistic number on what it would cost? And that sounds so bizarre to say, right? But what it would cost to field a team for a year in NIL money. What's a realistic number if you looked at it? And I'm not even going to say for Notre Dame, right? I'm not going to put you in that position. But if you were under the assumption in a Power 4 conference to be a competitive team, realistically you would like to have how much to spend in NIL?
Yeah, and this is going to go a couple different ways, but I was talking to a reporter, last week, and he talked about when this House settlement came through, and there was a $20.5 million rev share or that the schools were able to do. And a couple of years ago, Ohio State won the football championship, and everybody said they had a $22 million roster. If Ohio State had a $22 million roster next year, they could be one of the last teams in the Big Ten. So you see how quickly that's changed. Basketball is getting there and catching up really quickly with those numbers. And I saw something that somebody put out the other day, and all of these are, some coaches say stuff and it's not exactly
it's all kind of estimates, right?
True. Yeah, estimates, but somebody was saying if you don't have a $10 to $12 million roster, you're going to be behind. And I think Mick Cronin said it best: it's about the haves and the have-nots right now. And if you're one of the haves, you're in a pretty good position. If you're one of the have-nots right now, you're a feeder program for the people that do have the resources.
Which one do you feel you are?
Currently?
Yep.
You know what? We have a great situation. I love Notre Dame, and we're going to be the best that we can be. But I believe we're one of the have-nots, right? But it's that goes in a long way. There's some really good programs that are in the top 25 that are also in that way. I think it's moving to a model where there's 10 to 12 to 15 schools that are doing everything they need to do. Now, part of that is you still have to coach your team, right? You still have to have luck. You still have to build a roster the right way.
You got to stay healthy too, right?
You got to stay healthy, right? All these things give you a better advantage, but it doesn't mean you're going to win the national championship, right? And it doesn't mean you're going to finish last in your conference. It just gives you a better chance to do one or the other.
My thing, Coach, would be donor fatigue also. I mean, it's great if you want to go out and spend $12 million and get that money, but if you're going back to the same people over and over saying, hey, you know what, the last point guard, I know he left, but this guy, though, now we really got, eventually it's going to be cyclical, right, where people go in waves of when they're able to do it, except for those that have, like, the big pocket guys, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think it's driven by excitement. Right, like if you are showing that excitement, if they have something, if you're one of the 4 teams that are playing here today, because we're all pushing to do this, if you're one of the 4 teams that has that, you have that excitement and those fans and those big donor bases, they want it to continue to come here. They want to continue to help get you there. But if there's no excitement there, it's hard. And, where does it end eventually for some of these people that are, writing big checks to help you?
One of your stops along the way, Coach, I believe you had Ronald Norwood as a player, I believe when you were assistant at Butler, but certainly you're familiar with that program. Your overall thoughts on the hire of Ronald Norwood now to lead the Butler program?
Ronald's one of my favorite guys that I've ever coached. And I'm so happy for he and Butler and Grant that he's going to be the head coach there, and he's going to do a great job. Ron has such a big personality that the fans are going to love him. His players are going to love him, and his teams are going to play really tough, gritty, solid team basketball. And he's a fundamental guy. He's played for great coaches. He's worked for great coaches. He's going to play a modern system. His time in the NBA with the Pacers, with the Atlanta Hawks. He's going to play a system that kids are going to love and want to play in. So I'm excited for him, and I'm excited to see what he can do with the Butler program.
Did you inquire about that job?
No, I love everything about this place, man. But I also love the challenge that, things haven't gone great for us here at Notre Dame in the last 3 years. But, I haven't given up. I'm fired up, like I said, to let's keep going. Let's keep building. Let's keep growing, because I want year 4 to be the best one we've had, and then build from there.
So lastly, you got committee meetings and things like that, and it's very obvious why you would be on committees, Coach, and why you would, because you represent what's right about college basketball and the vision of it. What does the weekend look like for you or for most coaches when you come in here, other than walking around and just saying, you good, Coach? What all goes into the weekend?
Yeah. Once we're kind of finished with these, I've kind of completed my duties. Now it's about getting a chance to see some guys, right? See some former players. There's a lot of players, like we talked about the Butler program, and I just stood here a few minutes before we got on the phone with Matthew Graves, Willie Veasley, Sean Van Zant, Mike Green, that are all coaching college basketball. Guys like DJ Bird or guys like that I coached at Purdue. So guys you don't get a chance to see throughout the year. We're all busy with our own programs, really connecting with these guys, spending time with Coach Painter last night, spending time with some of the guys from, our Penn State staff. So reconnecting with guys, talking about different things, gaining as much information as you can on players that you could be recruiting next week. So that socialization, being able to see guys, talk to guys, spend time with them, eat dinner, and then everybody kind of get together and watch the games. And, the greatest host city that we have for the Final Four.
Coach, I appreciate the time as always, and certainly wish you the best of luck up at Notre Dame, and also just enjoying everything that comes with this particular weekend. Appreciate having you back on in your hometown here.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Appreciate it. Micah Shrewsbury joining us from Notre Dame. Really, really interesting stuff, especially about the NIL and the portal and Harrelson and all of it. Really, really good conversation. Much appreciated. By the way, it is a Friday. You know what that means. It means it is time for a Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday, which I'll be doing in just a couple of minutes. But a reminder, one of the things, and I think in a couple of weeks we're going to talk more about it again, and I know that I mention this a lot, but, when it comes to heart health and, this weekend, I mean, we joked about it, right, twice, the Braylon Mullins shot, I mentioned, as you were watching the rocket launch in Florida. At times we use that term like, oh, man, my heart skipped a beat or my heart was racing, those kinds of things. Those are euphemisms we use within culture. I get it. And for a man's standpoint, the warning signs are pretty obvious if there's a heart challenge or issue. You start sweating, your left arm goes, in my case, left arm went totally numb. You get that feeling of like a warm water in your sternum. All of those things can lead to the fact or show that you're having a heart attack. For women, it's different. The symptoms are different. It's a little more silent. And, cardiovascular heart disease is a leading cause of fatality for women in the United States. And I know it's really important to Franciscan Health to continue to raise awareness about that. And so I think a couple of weeks, we're going to talk to one of the doctors from Franciscan about that to make sure that if you are one of our 41 female listeners, that you are aware, but also gentlemen listening, whether it be your daughter, your wife, your mom, your sister, your coworker, to be aware also of women and heart health. And speaking of Franciscan, by the way, they are going to be on site as part of our Franciscan Health Golf outing April 30th, the Legends Golf Club down in Franklin. 1075thefan.com is the website where you can get all of the information. Sign up, whether it's for an individual or for a foursome, and they will be there on site doing health screenings, answering your questions. We'll all be there as well, and even Eddie will be there, I think. Eddie, you going to be there?
I might be, Jake. I need to figure out if I'm producing the show or not.
You should be able to produce on site.
No comment.
I mean, were you there last year?
I was not. I was here.
Did you have FOMO?
I did.
Okay, fair enough. Either way, April 30th, I think we'll try to make sure that Eddie's there, comes by and makes a cameo. People need to see the big head themselves. But we will, and I know that that's John's son's nickname also, but we'll be there April 30th. Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday next.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Franciscan Health is number one in Indiana when it comes to cardiovascular care, number one for interventional interventional cardiological care. Basically, when it comes to your heart, Franciscan is the place, and just a $49 heart scan can be all the difference in the world. $49 for a heart scan. I wish I could talk today, from Franciscan. It's non-invasive, does not take a long time to do. You can pay out of pocket, self-refer, and get that heart health risk assessment that comes with it from Franciscan. And each and every Friday, we talk about something that is a feel-good story in the world of sport. And one of them really kind of came to us over the course of this week. You know, we've talked about athletes that have overcome challenges. We've talked about athletes that have had adversity suddenly find them at the least opportune time. And we've talked about those that maybe weren't even able to get involved in sport and found their own way to make a contribution.
Or those who have defeated the odds that were against them in their recovery.
Yep. A number of different things we've talked about. And then you get those that are the kind of story that you feel good about it and you pull for it because you realize it's just good people that are finding their own way by staying true to who they are. So imagine, if you will, that you are an athlete playing high school basketball in a smaller town, a community of just over 5,000 people. I mean, that's your entire town is smaller than, say, or close to the same size as Carmel High School or Ben Davis or one of those. And you're a bigger kid, so you play basketball. And you're playing basketball because you enjoy the game. You like the math of it. You like the angles of it in an odd way. And maybe that's because of the fact that, you know, your younger brothers like playing basketball with you or watching you play. But you play at your high school in basketball-crazed Indiana, and you're an all-state honorable mention honoree. You're not first-team all-state, but you're a good, solid player. You're not on the Indiana All-Star team, but you are still somebody that your community enjoyed coming and watching play because you're a bigger kid that can shoot threes, and you don't get the same accolades or attention that some of the other kids that you grow up around are getting. But you stay true to who you are. You stay true to who you are, and you continue to study your math, which you really like, and you continue to follow the guidance and the path that your parents laid out for you. And your parents have instilled in you a theological base where you enjoy reading theological books, classical novels, listening to Christian music. And you get the chance to play at Huntington University, NAIA basketball. And over the course of 3 years playing NAIA basketball, you average a little over 12 points a game, just shy of 6 rebounds a game, but you become a pretty proficient three-point shooter. You knock down 114 threes. The opportunity then presents itself after 3 years of that to go and play Division I basketball at the University of Evansville. So you go ahead and go to Evansville, and at Evansville, now you get even more opportunity. You start 24 games of the 24 you play. You're averaging 15 a game. You're a MoVal, Missouri Valley Newcomer of the Year. You're the Scholar Athlete of the Year. And you shoot nearly 50%, 48.4% from the field, and you continue to shoot those threes. You get your degree, your degree from Huntington that you received in mathematics. Now you are getting a graduate degree, and you still have eligibility for graduate work to play for a year, and you agree to play for the University of Illinois. And your Three-point shooting continues to show itself at Illinois. You're working on a second graduate degree, this one in business analytics. The other was in theological work. You have a mathematics degree as well. You get married to a women's basketball player at Illinois. And in addition to that, you become an integral part of a team that is now back in your home state in the Final Four. That's the journey of Ben Humrickhouse of Tipton, Indiana. A kid that was probably overlooked and just was a bigger guy that could shoot threes at an NAIA school, kind of grew into himself, found the confidence, but most importantly, and the thing that I thought was the most impressive about him, stayed true to his faith, stayed true to what it was that was instilled in him that kept him grounded, that allowed him to look at the path of where he felt things were supposed to be taking him, as opposed to the path that he felt like might have denied him other opportunity. It wasn't about what he couldn't do or didn't do. It was about what still laid before him. And when we talked to him the other day on this program, Ben Humrickhouse of the Final Four participant Illinois Fighting Illini talked about all of those things that allowed him to take this unlikely journey from NAIA to the Final Four.
Before I really get into that, I have to give God all the glory for this. What I could say is a lot of this is God's grace, just continuing to help me to persevere, to push, to grow, to challenge myself. But then even God's sovereignty of putting me in positions with great people. Huntington was an incredible experience for me, where I got to learn so much about just how to grow, how to trust the staff around you, how to become, even a better basketball player, but a better man. And then like the way that I had to adapt and grow at Evansville. And then now being here at the University of Illinois, where roles may have shifted over my 2 years, and especially coming from Evansville and the way that was, I think a lot of it, so much of my journey is about trusting the staff that's around you, and then being so blessed to play with great people. And so now here with this team, you're able to kind of present to them why just being patient, being process-oriented, being a team player, and just, always committing to the day that's in front of you. Why that's so important, and I think that's shown over the season now, why late into the season we're having incredible success offensively, but even especially defensively, as we're playing with an extra connectivity as a team.
Really impressive, and I totally commend for Ben Humrickhouse, just like he talked about, looking forward and not back, and trusting the path that is there before you by staying true to who you are. Great story, and certainly look forward to watching him and clearly and listening to him there, regardless of your rooting interests, something that you can root for when good things happen to him in the Final Four. As for looking forward, you can always and should always continue to do so when it comes to your health. And like I mentioned, the #1 heart program in Indiana for cardiology by the Health Grades, #1 in Indiana for interventional coronary care and major cardiac surgery by CareChex. Franciscan Health offering the affordable heart scan for just $49. $49 heart scan comes with a heart health risk assessment and a read, if you will, of the calcium within your heart. You can sign up for one very easily. franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles. That's franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles. Or call 833-238-0688. That's 833-238-0688. As always, if you have any question about any of it, you can also always text me on my phone, and I will get you all of the information. John is out at the oldest bar in Indiana and the very best with our boy Marty Bacon at Slippery Noodle. We will find out what he's got cooking for his program as part of the crossover, brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141, an official Heil Heating and Cooling dealer. And we will find out from John in just a couple what he's got cooking on this Final Four Friday on The Fan. Hey there, Jake Query for Game Day Men's Health. Avon, Fishers, Carmel, Greenwood, the locations for Game Day Men's Health. And Game Day Men's Health is there to help get you guys back into the game, whether it be testosterone therapy, peptide therapies, which you can now take orally, by the way, which is a huge hit, weight loss injections, all of it to help you out, guys, to get you back into that game and get you back to feeling that energy that you need, get you that confidence to get you working out, just feeling better overall, whether it be that belly fat that has been so stubborn or just that midday, all of a sudden, fatigue factor. Man, I need a nap. Those are the things that the Game Day Men's Health is there to help with. And here's what I love about it. With any game plan, take the Final Four, for example. You're not going to go in with a game plan that's designed to beat Connecticut and then try to use that against Arizona. You've got to, it's different from team to team, different from person to person as well. And Game Day Men's Health comes up with a game plan that is dedicated to you and your primary care physician. If you want them to advise on what might be best for you, Game Day Men's Health, just fine with that as well. Totally efficient, friendly, in and out in an hour, and a number of therapies to help you get back in the game. Look at their website. See what they have available. Make the consultation appointment. Again, GameDayMen'sHealth.com. That is GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Really appreciate on the show today Ralph Reef as well as Taylor Tannenbaum. Micah Shrewsbury, I thought, really good conversation. And candid as well. I was, surprised but impressed when I said, so is Notre Dame a have or have not? And he said, well, right now we're a have not, when just talking about the overall budgets of everything that goes into it. I'll kind of end by going with what I talked about off the top, and that is it's a special weekend. It's a special weekend in this town, and yeah, there are going to be things about it that are going to be a challenge. The parking situations downtown going to be tough. Some of the redirect of roads going to be tough. You got a huge stage being set up for the concerts that take place starting with 21 Pilots tonight for free at the American Legion Mall. If you're not familiar with what that is, that's that huge area between the Indiana War Memorial and the downtown library. And that has been the epicenter of a number of different events in the history of this town. But with some of the nuisance that can come with it or just interruptions to your day-to-day, I think sometimes it's important to think about where we've come, where we've been, and where we've come now. In 1980, when the Final Four was at Market Square Arena, and you were a year removed from Bird versus Magic, and the Final Four was becoming a thing, culturally speaking, within the United States for certain, but it wasn't the event that it is now, and it didn't have the national eyeballs and attention and all of the buzz and atmosphere like it does now. When the 1980 Final Four was here, I remember one of the bigger, tidbits about that, not being that Purdue was in it or Louisville or UCLA or Iowa, but the fact that there was a kid in my neighborhood who was in high school, an older guy that I knew, that his parents got called because he got arrested because he and his friend decided to try to take as many license plates from out-of-town markets as they could. So they had this accumulation of license plates from around, and they ended up getting busted for it. And that was kind of the thing that most people where I grew up remembered of the 80 Final Four. And things were different by 1991 when Vegas came here and it was in the Dome and you had Duke and Bobby Hurley and Christian Laettner and Grant Hill's incredible alley-oop. And all of a sudden, Indianapolis was part of, and at that time, it was surreal because it hadn't become to the point yet where Indianapolis was an epicenter sports destination town. But the Final Four is a huge part of how it became that. Yes, the Pan Am Games were big, the National Sports Festival, obviously the Indianapolis 500s. But by 97, when the Final Four came back and Circle Center was abuzz and it was the site of where TV studios were and live broadcasts and Pan Am Plaza, then it was off and running. And now it's to the point where I think most would tell you that this is where they prefer it should be annually, but certainly every 5 to 6 years. And it's gotten to the point where it is almost just an assumption when you live in Indy that the Final Four is going to be here every couple of years. But I just hope we don't take for granted where it was that we came from, because it still is a city that puts on these events better than anybody. And it's because we civically have a pride about doing it the right way. And it's awesome. And I think it's going to be an awesome Final Four. And people that come down to Indianapolis and come from the other markets, one of the can't-miss places that they always have to go, whether it be a Colts game, Final Four, NBA Finals, is the Slippery Noodle. Marty Bacon is the absolute best. He's the most hospitable dude in Indianapolis. It's the oldest bar in Indiana in terms of the bar that's right there when you walk in. And J&V is there today, and I know getting ready to put on a Final Four Friday extravaganza of fun and celebration. John, you got to be fired up here as part of the crossover from Love Heating and Air.
Hey, Jake, I may have a beer or a few, maybe. That's what I hear. That's what I've heard right here. Yeah, Bud Light's got us, Jake. You're right on what you said about that, and I know we often take for granted what's going on around here. It is just so epic, the events they put on. But it is magnificent once again, and the buzz downtown is incredible, as you would expect. And here we are, buddy. Here we are once again with the Final Four and some fun. And when you get off, you got to come down here. I don't know what you plan on doing, but you got to join us down here a little bit later.
Yeah, because you know what? I do love the noodle, and I love Marty for sure, and
yes,
and the folks that you're with from Bud Light and all of it. So I may have to do that indeed. When I do so, if I'm listening in and eavesdropping on the program, what do you got lined up?
Well, yeah, it's going to be funny. The dump button is probably going to have to be monitored, I'm assuming, with James back at the studio. But Nathan Christensen's going to join us. He's the director of athletics. Not yet, we're okay. He's going to hang with us for a little bit at the start of the show, the director of athletics from Indiana State. Brian Bush is the voice of Michigan. He and Terry Mills on the Michigan Radio Network. He's going to join us. Tucker Barnhart, former Reds catcher, going to join us a little bit later on. And, Jake, I want to play the game. Where did you play? Like, I'm curious how many athletes that played college basketball or coached are in here. And, you know, I'm not that bright, and maybe I don't notice them, right? I want to know where you played, what you did, and while you're here. Because you see all these different sweatsuits and all these different logos, and sometimes from whatever league, whatever division we're talking about, we don't know what they are. I kind of want to know that. You ever thought about that?
Totally.
With that in mind?
Yeah. And it's funny, too, the number of guys that you'll see that are coaching for some school, and then you look at it and you're like, wait a minute, like I remember when that guy, you know, he was on the Sweet 16 team from Chattanooga, 25, you know, whatever it might be, right? I mean, a ton of it. And like I said,
let's play a quick game here, by the way, if you don't mind, Jake. Okay. I don't want to cut you off, but there's dudes sitting down here, and it's a kind of a purple with white outline block lettering RV. RV is the logo. And it's Nike gear, and they got a dude they're talking to between them. One guy's tall, about 6'7". There's a dude talking to them between them that's got a Kansas City Chiefs jersey on. RV. Help me. What would RV mean?
See, my
and
first
he's
thought,
eating
he's
eating a BLT. I don't know if does that help? He's eating a BLT.
I thought
RV.
of Rio Grande, but that would be RG. Okay, so it wouldn't be that. Something Valley. Rio. Is there a Rio Valley?
Rio Valley.
Rio Grande Valley, I think.
RV. They're not paying attention. I'm not up here, so they can't hear me right now. But RV. It's not that, I don't think.
See, now you're...
Well, I know it. Hey, let me ask this dude.
Yeah.
Jake, hold on a second. Okay. I'm going to interrupt. Hey, ask him what RV means right there.
I'm going...
ask that dude
Rick
what
Venturi,
RV means.
maybe.
Yeah, right there. Ask him what RV means, the logo on his shirt. Go out there. You see that dude? Yeah, right there. One more. There you go, Kev. He's got RV right there. RV
Now,
on
John
his
could have
shirt.
just walked
right
over
there.
and asked by now.
Yeah.
Right? Do we have an answer, John?
It's a high school. Hold on a second. I just read his lips. It's a high school, Kev. Where is it? All right, Royal Valley in Kansas. It's a high school. So I put together the puzzle. Thank you, Kev. I put together that puzzle a little bit. It's from Kansas, so that makes sense.
They love
Royal Valley
BLTs
High
in
School.
Kansas. I can tell you that. Right?
Yeah, man, he's eating that pork like it's nobody's business right
That's
there,
it.
brother.
By
Let
the
me
way,
tell you.
that is in. Here you go. I looked it up.
Yeah.
Royal Valley is in Emporia, Kansas, and just so you know, Emporia, Kansas is where. Do you remember in the early 80s, John, like everybody had the little plastic thing you put in the windowsill of your car so you could put a 12-ounce like Coke can in it?
Right.
That little contraption was invented by a guy from Emporia, Kansas, who now lives on like a huge palatial estate there. I know that because my fraternity brother Sean Hoog was from Emporia, Kansas. There you go.
I'm assuming there's some sort of JUCO school, because there's one in like every small town in Kansas. Is
Correct.
there not?
Kansas
Those still
has nothing
exist?
but junior colleges. Royal Valley High School, public secondary school in Hoyt, Kansas.
RV.
That is right, RV. Now, it doesn't say what their colors are, but, purple and white.
Yeah.
Purple and white, and the mascot
I know
is
what
the
I'm
Panther.
talking about.
That's right. There you go.
You got it.
All right, John, we'll throw it out to you here in just a little bit at the Noodle
You got it,
and
buddy.
enjoy Final Four weekend, all right?
You got it.
That is how we do the RV Royal Valley crossover, brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com. 317-353-2141 is the telephone number. All right, Monday on the program.
Hold on, Jake. What's your prediction for this weekend? I've got Arizona, UConn advancing to the championship Monday night, and I've got Tommy Lloyd and the Wildcats winning it all.
Well, we won't know. We don't have to make our Monday prediction until then, right? Although I guess
I'm just going ahead.
When the brackets came out, I had Connecticut. I think they obviously would be a big underdog at this point, and I love the way Illinois. I'm not selling short Illinois at all, but I'm only going with Connecticut because I said it at the beginning of the tournament, so I've got to stick with that. But I'll say Connecticut over Michigan. But I think in reality, anyway, I'll stick with that. Connecticut over Michigan. There you go. All right, we'll be back with you at noon coming up on Monday. Thanks again, Taylor Tannenbaum. Thanks, Ralph Reef. And thanks, Micah Shrewsbury. And most importantly, thanks to all of you for listening to Query and Company, and enjoy the Final Four in Indy.